with what the parliamentary party has done in the Conservative Party.
Just as the people here will look forward to a massive majority for their party and for their leadership as they head towards a Labour government that takes Britain into the celebration of the millennium, so the Tories will be saying, how did this happen? Why did it happen? Can we put it right? How do we put it right? We have a very deep hole that we have to dig ourselves out from, and we've already heard from so many of the remarks coming in from Tories how bitter they are. We now go back to the very different picture in Huntingdon. Here is John Major with his wife Norma as they go up to the Count. He smiles and greets courteously and politely and friendly his friends and supporters here. Here he is held in high affection and regard. But this is the last time that he will stand here as Prime Minister. This is a seat that he has held since 1979. He's been Prime Minister since 1990, and he's about to hear that he has won his seat. But that he is not. He knows this very well indeed. He is not going to be in this position for very long.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll now have the official declaration of the result here in the Huntingdon constituency, and that will be read to you by the High Sheriff of Cambridgeshire, Mr. David Rampley. Mr. Rampley.
He had the largest majority of any MP here in 1992 because of boundary changes. It'll be a bit smaller, but it's still very safe.
The returning officer for the Huntingdon constituency hereby give notice that the total number of votes given for each candidate at the election was as follows. David James Bellamy, 3,114. Charles Raymond Coyne, 331. Veronica Hufford, 177. John Major, 31,501. Matthew James Owen, 8,390. Jason Rees,
Labour,
13,361.
So the Prime Minister, as he still is, safely back into Huntingdon, his seat there. He's held that seat there.
John Major has been duly elected to serve as a member for the Huntingdon constituency.
And here is the full result. Majority 18,000. Look at David Bellamy down there on 3,000. I suspect that's the highest vote that the referendum party has had. But the swing from Conservative Labour lower than elsewhere, 6.8%. The Prime Minister will now speak.
Sheriff, I'd first like, if I may, to congratulate all those who've carried out the count of this very large constituency with such skill and with such speed. I'd also add my thanks to all those who cared for the security of the polling booths throughout the day and manned them. It is a job that has been done, as we have come to expect in Huntingdon, with immense efficiency, and I'm very grateful to everyone who played their part in carrying that out today. I'd like also, if I may, to thank my fellow candidates in this constituency. I have been something of an absentee candidate, at least in the Huntingdon constituency, but I understand that the battle here has been fought with great courtesy and great skill. And I congratulate all those who played a part in the campaign. I'm sure they will look forward to their future campaigns. I'd like also, if I may, to thank a number of people to whom I owe almost more than it's possible to express readily and easily. Perhaps I may start with my agent, Peter Brown, a peer amongst agents. Not only my agent, but a very old and dear friend, and I'm very grateful to him for all he has done, not just during this campaign, but during recent years when he's perhaps had to undertake many burdens that perhaps would not normally have fallen upon the shoulders of anyone's agent. I'd like to thank also my constituency officers and the literally thousands of people who've worked in this constituency on my behalf during this campaign and over recent years. Their work has been immense. The affection I have for this constituency is not easily expressed, but I think it is known by those people who live in the constituency, and I'm deeply privileged to have the opportunity of representing it yet again. Huntingdonshire has only had 2 members of Parliament since 1945. I have just been elected for the 5th time in this constituency, and I look forward with the same pleasure at serving my constituents in the future as I have found in doing so in the past. Above all, though, I'd like to express my thanks to Norma and to my family. Perhaps these thanks are most appropriately expressed in private, but I think most people who have known Norma, most people who have seen her, will realise that not only has she graced this constituency for 18 years, I think she has graced a much larger stage in recent years, and my debt to her and my debt to her is one not easily paid. It is perfectly clear now that the Labour Party has had an extremely successful evening. I telephoned Mr. Blair a little over an hour ago to congratulate him on his success and to wish him every good fortune in the great responsibilities that he will have in the years that lie ahead. This is a great country. He inherits a country in extremely good economic shape. I wish him every success in sustaining that in the interests of all the people of this country. I think I can promise that the Conservative Party will be a vigorous opposition. Where it is appropriate to support, we will support. Where it is in the interests of the country to support, we will support. Where we believe the policies are wrong, we will oppose vigorously, but honestly and fairly. But all that, I think, lies ahead for another day. For today, let me perhaps just add one further thought. Elections always have winners, and they always have losers. It is a very great occasion to win an election, a very great occasion to be elected to Parliament. Many colleagues and old friends of mine will have contested seats tonight and lost them. Many colleagues will have contested seats on behalf of my party this evening, contested them well and bravely, but lost them. I would like, if I may, to express to all of them my thanks for all they've done on behalf of our country and our party, and my thanks also to the literally hundreds of thousands of people who have helped in the Conservative Party campaign and the millions of our fellow citizens who voted for the Conservative Party on this occasion. We are a great and historic party, the Conservative Party. We have had great victories in our time. We have had defeats in our time. We accept them both, I hope, with a certain dignity and a certain grace. Tonight, we have been comprehensively defeated. We will listen to the voice of the electorate. We will consider what has been said to us. I think we must reflect upon it. I know that we will. And I know when we have reflected, we will begin to prepare once again for that day in the future, I hope not too far distant, when my party may once again return to government in the service of this country. Thank you.
John Major there with a gracious speech in victory and in defeat in one breath. Victory in the seat, defeat for his party in this election campaign. The comprehensive defeat, he called it. He made an affectionate, husbandly reference to his wife Norma for supporting him in public all the way through. He talked about ringing Tony Blair and wishing him every success, but he promised that the Tories would be a vigorous opposition, and he expressed his sympathy for those many of his colleagues who are now out of Parliament, although he is still in. That was the manner of John Major then, wasn't it?
Very much what you would expect of John Major, always gracious, whatever happened to him. He has taken the most enormous punishment during his premiership since 1992. Sometimes I have wondered how he's dared to get out of bed in the morning, but he's somehow battled on. This must be one of the worst moments. The scale of the defeat is truly awful, and I must say, looking at Norma Major's face, that said it all as well.
Thank you. The news that Michael Howard is back in Folkestone Hythe, only a tiny swing to Liberal Democrats, so he is one cabinet minister that is in. One that is now out in Enfield Southgate is Michael Portillo. Commiserations, Mr. Portillo. It must have come as a tremendous shock to you to lose.
Well, I always prepared myself slightly for it, so no, so far I've taken it quite well, I think.
Well, you kept a brave smile on your face, but inside you must be weeping heartily as a politician for everything that's suddenly disappeared.
Well, I'm weeping for the Conservative Party. It's a terrible evening for us, and it will be very difficult for those of my colleagues who have been elected to the House of Commons to put it back together, and I dearly hope that they will be able to put it back together, and I hope that they will do that, pulling together, striving for unity, and if there's anything I can do to help them, I will.
You are always talked of as someone who would be a candidate, who is a potential leader of the party. Are you going to try yourself? I know it's early days, but you say from the sidelines you try and help, but presumably you would like to get back in. You haven't given up politics.
All this happened about 10 minutes ago.
Yeah,
I need to think it through, I think.
I understand that.
But every cloud has a silver lining, and the silver lining of this one is you're not going to ask me about the leadership tonight.
That's perfectly true. And it's nice to hear that you've got a bit of sense of humour even in trouble. But tell me this, what do you think it was? Here we had this sea change. What is it? What is the heart of it? You must have some feeling for that, because you knew things were likely to go wrong as you went into this election.
Yeah, all sorts of things. But I was saying earlier this evening, and I stick to it, that I don't think the party should rush to judgment, and I'm not going to now. We do need to reflect on it. I'm sure that disunity played a very large part, and that's why it is so essential that whatever we do now, we don't descend to recriminations. And again, it's a relief to be able to make that point without anyone suspecting me of personal ambition in making it.
Now, I spoke to one of your earlier to one of your former colleagues, David Mellor, who is also out, and asked him, liberated in the same way as you are, what he thought as a colleague John Major should do. And he said that his advice would be that he would like it for the party's sake if John Major stayed on to allow the wounds to heal somewhat. What is your view of that?
I'm not even an elector for the party leadership, so I'll leave it to those who are.
But do you think he ought to stay? I mean, from the party's point of view, would it be a good thing if John Major stays on as leader, or if he swiftly says, OK, over to everyone else?
Look, if I had been elected tonight, I would not be giving him advice. I'm now not even a member of the electorate that chooses the leader, so I'm not going to give him any advice in that position.
I understand. You say you will help from the wings. Thank you for joining us. And again, sympathies, of course, any politician losing a seat under those circumstances. It's pretty miserable stuff.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Portillo.
Good night.
And good night to you. And now, where we are with 487 results now in, let's have a look at our summary. Labour has won, as we know, and the predicted majority that we now have is 185. You remember we were 159 on the exit poll. It's 185 in reality we're predicting. With 487 seats in, Labour has already got 364 of them. The Conservatives 82, the Liberals on 30, and the others on 11. Now, the Labour majority that we're predicting of 185 means that Labour would have 422 seats, way past the 330 necessary. The Conservatives, 164 seats, the Liberal Democrats on 44, and the rest on 29. And here is the results, some of the results. They've gained Enfield Southgate, that's Michael Portillo's seat. They've gained Harrow East, they've gained Wimbledon on a huge swing. They've gained Brighton Pavilion. They've gained, no, we're going to have some Conservative results now. The Conservatives have lost Tatton, that's Neil Hamilton out. They've lost Perth, they've held on to Aldridge Brown Hills, they've lost Tayside North. They haven't held on to many except their very safe seats. And here are Liberal Democrat gains in Twickenham. Liberal Democrat have gained Isle of Wight, they've gained Taunton, and they've gained Newbury, which was the by-election seat that they won in 1993 after the last election. Michael Portillo's out, Neil Hamilton, as we've seen, from Galloway and Upper Nisdale, Ian Lang is out as well. And Malcolm Rifkin, Edinburgh Pentland. In Stirling, Michael Forsyth, in Bristol West, William Waldegrave is also gone. 3 leading figures there. Angela Rumbold is out. Norman Lamont in Harrogate and Knaresborough is out. And Nicholas Budgeon in Wolverhampton South West is also out. 3 big figures on the back benches. And Tony Blair has said this is a vote for the future and for an end to division. There is no greater honour than to serve the British people. John Major said just now, we have been comprehensively defeated. So there we are, and with that view of the national picture, let's have a look at Alistair's battleground. Alistair.
Jonathan, thank you very much indeed, and there it is. The first page of the battleground, screaming red to you. Couple of points just to underline the nature and scale of this victory. Crawley, a seat that has never ever been held by Labour. Nicholas Soames knew that. He left and went and fought somewhere else. Brighton Pavilion, never held by the Labour Party. That rolled over quite easily. City of Chester, never held by the Labour Party before. Out goes Giles Brandreth. Over here, Sir Ivan Lawrence's seat in Burton, last held by the Labour Party in 1945 in that great landslide. That went very, very easily. Leeds North East, that was our marker seat. That went. Over here, Birmingham Edgbaston, that goes to the Labour Party for the first time, and along with Hall Green going, no Labour soft spots in Birmingham at all the Tories have gone. Shunt the battleground again, and let's have a look at the next territory. Remember, this is the measurement of people changing their mind, the swing along here at the top. 2 of the Tory seats in Scotland falling away. Remember, there are now no Tory members of Parliament at all up in Scotland. And so it went on. Colchester, a Liberal Democrat
gain. Sorry to cut you off there, Alistair. Here is John Major leaving his count in Huntingdon, presumably to go back home, passing through the sea of cameramen, photographers, supporters and security men. He leaves the count. He's left. I don't know whether we can catch him outside. Alistair, sorry to cut you off in prime. Go on,
Not at all. No, I'm sorry. No, very important to see that. I was just continuing along here. 8 out of every 10 people changing their minds. Portsmouth North, been Tory for as long as people can remember. That's gone to the Labour Party. Over we go into here, into the 9% swing area, across into 10, Brighton, Kemp Town. That did once upon a time used to be a Labour seat. Back again about 30 or 40 years ago. It's now back into the hold. And Bristol West down there, that's another city. There are now no Tory members of Parliament in Bristol. Across we go into 11%. Bromsgrove is a Tory hold there, a new candidate. Julie Kirkbride used to be a journalist on the Daily Telegraph. And shunt it along again and get into the territory here of 12% swings. These seats in safe Tory territory like Hove and Sittingbourne in Sussex and in Kent, almost unimaginable. And again, over here, Brent North, Sir Rhodes Boyson goes out. 3 Brent seats in North London, all of them Labour now. And finally, in this 14% swing, that's 2% more, 2 more people out of every 100 changing their minds than happened in 1945. There you've got Gillingham going to the Labour Party, Wimbledon, Charles Goodson Wicks, he's out, Romford, Michael Newbert, he's out as well. It's only here that you start to get the Tories hanging on, and there's one of the few members of the Cabinet with some good news. That's John Selwyn Gummer back in Suffolk Coastal. Jonathan.
Thank you. We now go to scenes that have been going on in the Royal Festival Hall again. Let's go down to the Royal Festival Hall, see what's going on there. Oh, there's serious party stuff.
Ready to party? Are you ready to party?
Well, that is a celebration. Whether it's old Labour, new Labour, any party, you could enjoy that kind of party, I guess. Michael Heseltine, good evening. Jonathan Dimbleby here. We've just left the festival hall where there is huge celebration, and you are on air, even though you're doing your tie-up. Mr. Heseltine, you were saying before that it was a disappointing night.
Thank you.
What do you reckon of this night? What's your overriding thought about it? You can't hear me, can you?
Are you talking to me?
I certainly am.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry.
That's all right. It's early hours. It's easy to forget. We've watched you doing your tie-up, and now we've got you.
Okay,
Thank you very much for joining us. It is clearly a disaster of a night. What's your immediate thought about that?
Well, it is an extremely unfortunate result for the Conservative Party, but everyone knows that we have a party that has a huge sense of destiny, an immense appetite for government, and a track record of recovery. We will be back. But what is important now is for the party to conduct its own analysis of what has happened, to do it in private, to avoid recriminations, and then to recognise that we're in opposition. We're likely to be there for 4 to 5 years, and there are particular skills in opposition which you need to relearn. But my word, I remember being part of those opposition teams, and what a formidable opposition we were.
Are you going to be in there fighting from the heart of the matter for the next 5 years?
Well, I've always fought wherever the Conservative Party invited me to do so, and if John Major wants me to play a part in doing that, then of course I will continue to do it.
Now, as inevitably there is at a moment of defeat, already people start saying, what's going to happen next? You say we've got to do things privately, but things become public. Already there are some saying that John Major ought to stay on. Please stay on, John Major, so that we can lick the wounds and heal the wounds. Don't just leave us now to have what will otherwise be could be a rather bloody battle. What's your own instinct about that? If he's ready to stay on, would you like to see him stay on?
Well, yes, I saw his interview just a few minutes ago at his own account, and I got the impression that he was intending to stay on, and that has a very great deal to commend it. And certainly I've been fighting to secure his re-election and fighting to help him in his tenure as Prime Minister for now some time, and I will be only too delighted to continue to work at his side if he wants me to do that.
Presumably as Deputy Leader is what you would become, would be the natural alternative role, yes?
Well, I believe that John has done a remarkable job as Prime Minister. It's a very sad verdict that has been passed in this election, but I think he's got a great deal to give to the Conservative Party, and I will continue to support him in any way that he wants me to do.
You have lost a significant number of very senior figures who might be expected to be one or other of those that would pick up the mantle and run with it, haven't you?
Yes, I think that is very right. And but the one thing I would say is that they will be back. You're not going to see people of the talent of Michael Forsyth and Ian Lang, Malcolm Rifkin, Michael Portillo removed for very long from the central direction of the Conservative Party.
Can I ask you this? I know you don't want to go into detail. You said you won't, but you must have as the consummate politician, you must have a feel of why the country in this way has gone so massively against the Tories.
Yeah, well, certainly I have my views, and so will many other people, but what I've said consistently is that these are matters to be expressed in private by many people with good humour and with tolerance and with patience, and the very last thing we want is a public brawl of any sort or divisive recriminations that will only prolong the impact of the defeat. The object of the exercise is to get back into a fighting force as quickly as possible.
Let me ask you just one thing then. Do you think the divisions did harm?
There's no question about that. The party, we saw that. I mean, when the Labour Party were in opposition, one of the things that kept them in opposition for long was the genuine splits and disunity in that party. And that's a mistake the Conservative Party must not make.
Thank you very much for joining us, Michael Heseltine.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
And Michael Heseltine warning against disunity in opposition with great ferocity there, quiet ferocity. 504 results in. Let's have a look at some of them here on my results computer. And this is Hastings and Rye, another Labour game with a majority of 256 Conservatives out there. The swing there, 18.5%, another of these enormous swings down in the south coast. Harrow East, majority of 9,738, and there is Hugh Dykes out there, a leading, erstwhile quotes, wet in the party and a pro-European, but he's out. I don't think it has much to do with being pro or anti-European. I guess that's what a lot of people are going to tell us, that it wasn't much to do with that. The swing from Conservative to Labour, 18%. And now Thanet South, the Labour gain here, majority 2,878, and Jonathan Aitken is out. The swing from Conservative to Labour, 15%. And Finchley and Golders Green, this is the one we were talking about. This was Margaret Thatcher's seat, Finchley and Golders Green. There has been a significant change, boundary change, but nonetheless, Labour have gained Finchley and Golders Green with a majority of 3,189. The swing there, 15% against the Tories. And Burton, Labour gained again, majority 6,330. Ivor Lawrence out there, the chairman of the Home Affairs Select Committee. The swing from Conservative to Labour, 9.3%. Look at all of that. Now just let's go swiftly round everyone for your general thought. First of all, Mike Brunson.
It is astonishing, isn't it, in this election, how the state of the economy accounted for absolutely nothing. There was nothing that the Tories could pray in aid, as it were. The good news that was drowned out by the bad. It is quite plain that people were absolutely determined to see the back of this Conservative government, and they have said so in devastating numbers.
Alistair Stewart.
The targeting in the battleground, the regional battlegrounds, has been brilliant. Let me just tell you, in London, Labour's vote was up by nearly 13%, in the South East by nearly 12%, in the West Midlands by nearly 9%. But I take you back to something John Prescott said much earlier on in the evening. You know, we had a battleground target, and we virtually doubled it. So they did do the basic groundwork for a working majority of maybe 40 seats. They have exceeded that beyond theirs and our wildest dreams.
And in the analysts area, the three of you, first Colin Rallings. Colin.
Well, Jonathan, it's the historical nature of the result that so impresses me. The worst Tory share, we think now, since perhaps 1832, the only election where the Conservatives have got less than 30% of the vote. They'll get more than 30% tonight, but it won't be much more than 30.
Extraordinary. David Butler.
It's the first election since the war in which over 100 seats have changed hands. By the time we're through tonight, 160 or 170 will have changed hands. Again, like Colin, I have to stress the scale of the change more than any of the fine details, because on the whole, it was a fairly uniform swing.
And David Cowling.
Wimbledon, Hove, Hastings, Castle Point, St Albans, nobody, I certainly couldn't have dreamt those were going to change. But the other feature that's historic is that we've so far got about 88 women, more than the 60 that was the previous total that we had historically. So that's going to be another change of some significance to the House of Commons.
John Redwood has broken his silence to say that he's not discussing leadership issues, and I quote him, "We need to think about what we should do now and look to John Major as our leader," which will doubtless gratify John Major. Tim Rogers now is in Cardiff, in the Welsh capital. Tim, we've got Brecon and Radnorshire to declare tomorrow, but it looks pretty much like a wipeout for the Tories in Wales, doesn't it? Oops, he's gone. Never mind, we'll get him back and we'll talk to him when he comes back. These things happen down the line. Just on the John Redwood thought, I mean, some will say it's all very well to say, look, John Major, our leader. The others will say it would have been jolly nice if he had looked to not challenging John Major 2 years ago, weren't they, in the party?
Absolutely, absolutely. As we've said during the course of the evening, the recriminations will be there. The splits, as you heard Michael Heseltine saying without hesitation that the splits in the party had damaged them. And as we've been talking, there's an official Downing Street statement which says the Prime Minister will be seeking an audience with the Queen at 11:30. That's just in a few hours from now, isn't it? 11:30 to tender his resignation as Prime Minister and First Lord of the Treasury. So the process of handing over will begin formally then.
And at that point, knowing that there will be Tony Blair will follow him there, we can now go back to Tim in Cardiff. Sorry, we lost you amidst a glitter of picture. Tim, carry on.
No, that's all right. We were talking earlier about the probability of a complete Tory wipeout in Wales, and, well, that's certainly definitely the case. The only Tory seat still to be declared is Brecon and Radnor, as you were saying earlier, and that won't be until tomorrow. But so far, all the Conservative seats have gone, even Clwyd West, the safest Tory seat in Wales, which some pundits thought would certainly stay in Conservative hands. Before this election, in fact, Wales had the safest Labour seats in Britain, and there's an old joke here that votes for the party are not counted, they're weighed. Well, that certainly seems to be true tonight.
Let me ask you about, people say too that Wales is the stronghold of old Labour, always been rather resentful. I say always, it has been rather a short period of new Labour. Is that still the case? Is there that feeling that these people in Westminster are a rather different crowd from us with our tradition of Labour in Wales?
This is certainly the cradle of socialism in Britain, and there will be many old Labourites who will be wanting to remind Tony Blair and the future cabinet of their socialist roots, and will want to see that the Labour government in future goes back to those roots and takes care of the people who've been so loyal to Labour over the years.
I noticed earlier on that Dafydd Wigley's back in as the leader of Plaid Cymru, but there was a big swing even in his seat in Carnarvon away to the Labour Party, and we're predicting that Plaid will only have 4 seats. They practically stood still, haven't they, in this election so far, it looks like.
Yes, that's absolutely true, and in fact many pundits in Wales were actually predicting that beforehand. The Plaid seat which was in the greatest doubt was Ynys Môn, although Plaid have managed to hold on to that, and they're trumpeting the fact that their vote actually went up at Ynys Môn, and they're rather pleased about that. But no, we didn't think that Plaid would win more than 4 seats tonight. They've consolidated and held on to their position.
Tim Rogers, thanks very much. And now I can see Julia Somerville at this extraordinary party in the Festival Hall. Julia, I'm afraid I'm so ignorant, I didn't know who the band was, but everyone was enjoying it enormously. Can you help us with that, or have I put you too much on the spot?
No, I can indeed. It was Dee Ream, just for your information. And of course they set the place on fire, playing the campaign tune, everybody shouting and dancing. I said it was Bedlam before. I don't know what the next step up from Bedlam is now, perhaps cacophony or something. Anyway, that's what it's like now. The great build-up, of course, to the arrival of Tony Blair. The Shadow Foreign Secretary Robin Cook has in fact arrived outside the building. He's making his way inside now, and I hope he's going to come and talk to us in about 5 minutes' time. But as you can see, the place is really jumping.
I can see it is. Flashing lights and a lot. It does seem too that we were being a bit dry about the control exercised by Peter Mandelson, to the effect that, you know, you had to drink orange juice and all the rest of it if you were in Labour Party headquarters. It does look as though people have moved on to something more substantial.
Yeah, well, don't you think it's sometimes the characteristic of people who are incredibly buttoned up, that when they do let go, they really let go? And I think this is certainly the case as to what's happening down here. I mean, the champagne's flowing. My producer's very excited because he's just been embraced by a semi-naked woman. I mean, you know, they're having a good time.
Have you managed to preserve your integrity?
Have I managed to have a drink?
No. Well, if you... I said preserve your integrity.
You have to speak up.
I can't shout at you any louder. Preserve your integrity. Now, you may identify preserving your integrity with having a drink. What I meant was, have you looked after yourself all right there?
I've been looked after. The first person who looked after me was Richard Branson, who gave me a glass of champagne. And since then, I've been doing very well, thank you.
The truth is, good for you, the truth is that this is no longer really a political party. It's a genuine revival party. It is a party.
Yes, I mean, you can't blame them for being triumphalist tonight. They have had a triumph and they're behaving like it, so that every Tory head that falls gets a huge shout. In fact, you have a swingometer, I have a screamometer, and I can tell you that the screamometer hit red and beyond when Michael Portillo fell victim, and so it goes on.
Julia, you kindly told me that it was Dee Ream, and I'm told that we can now hear them as they played the Labour theme tunes. Let's have a listen, enjoy ourselves, and let other people enjoy themselves as well, listening to Dee Ream.
Go ahead.
I lose track of time. Can't see the woods for the trees. Set up the light, burning the bridges as you go. I'm too weak to fight you. I got my personal hell to deal with. Then you walk my path, wear my shoes. Talk like that, I'll be an angel, and then we'll only get better. We'll only get better. Now I found you, I know that things can only get better. Can only get better. Can only get better. Now I found show me prejudice and greed. They've shown us how we will learn to deal with this disease. I look at things now in a different light than I did before, and I found the country. I think that you can be like you.
Well, that, in case you were in any doubt, was the official Labour Party celebration. And just as you were watching that, you probably noticed that Dennis Skinner got back in Bolsover. I wonder what the beast of Bolsover would have thought of that party. I don't suppose we shall ever know, but I expect we'll hear from him before long. Now, we're just about on the hour of 4 o'clock. Let's have a look at our election scoreboard. Here, 519 seats in. Labour's got 379 of them, Conservatives 97, the Liberal Democrats on 32, and the rest on 11. And the Labour majority of 185, we are predicting, means that Labour would have 422 seats in the next Parliament, Conservatives 163, the Liberal Democrats 45, and the rest on 29. So there is the result as it stands so far, with 520 results in of the 659 that are due to come in. The swing we've got at the moment is 10.3% from Conservative to Labour, and we are predicting a Labour majority, as I said, of 185. We're expecting to go and join John Major in just a moment, but Mike, those scenes. Can't remember when you last saw that kind of thing, but you're not going to have a chance to tell us about it because we're about to go now to see John Major in very different atmosphere in Huntingdon, departing from the Count. His supporters, loyal supporters there, warming to him, but he walks away having graciously spoken about defeat and about the honour of holding important office and wishing Tony Blair well. There he leaves the Count and presumably on his way back home, where he may or may not continue to watch what is happening this evening as the events continue. We can now go to Folkestone, where Michael Howard is back in. Good evening, Mr. Howard.
Good evening.
You are one of us...
Oh, good morning, I said.
Well, it is actually good morning. If we say good evening, it makes people feel it's earlier, that's why. No one feels that they've got to go to bed. You're safely in. You've lost an awful lot of your senior colleagues. It must be an extraordinarily awful night.
It is a dark night for the Conservative Party. And I congratulate Mr. Blair on the famous victory which he has won, and I wish him well. But it's worth remembering that he has won his famous victory by promising not to dismantle the achievements of 18 years of Conservative government. And the task of the next Conservative opposition will be to protect those achievements and to come up with new ideas, new ways of facing the challenges that face our country as we move to the next millennium, ways which will be consistent with and constant to our principles.
When you say new ways, you've got to really got a radical rethink.
We have, that is true. And I'd say this to the Conservative Party tonight, that this is not a time for recrimination. This is a time for coming together, not for looking back, but for looking forward to face the challenges which will be before the country in the next few years.
But you can't look forward without looking back, because that's the only basis on which you know what way to go forward. Isn't that the case?
I think we should come together. I don't think we should waste time on any recrimination as to why what happened tonight occurred. I think we must look forward and work together and come together as a loyal opposition.
Some of your colleagues have said, for instance, Michael Heseltine told me just a few minutes ago that he thought the divisions had been very damaging. The former Chancellor, Ken Clarke, said he wished that they'd been able to stick on Europe and not on the economy and not get sidetracked into Europe. What's your general thought about those two propositions?
I'm not going to look back. I want to look forward. I believe that the Conservative Party should come together tonight. It's a dark night for us. We should pause and reflect and look forward, not back.
Do you believe, Michael Howard, that it would be in the interests of the party to help that happen, for John Major not to make a swift departure from his position as leader, but to stay there for a while at least?
I have always supported John Major, and I shall continue to support him for as long as he wishes to lead the party.
Michael Howard, thank you very much for joining us. Good morning to you. And we're now with Robin Cook, who I think is in the Festival Hall. Are you, Mr.
I
Cook?
am indeed, Jonathan. I've just flown in from Edinburgh.
You've just missed Dee Ream dancing away. It was quite a sight.
I'm pressed to hear it, Jonathan, but I think I'm quite happy to watch the dancing.
Obviously you're cheerful, but are you...
Oh, yes, I think I'd be a very hard man to please if I wasn't cheerful, Jonathan.
Yeah, what I want to know from you first of all is, now that you have to take up the burdens of office, are you going to give up being a tipster?
Well, that's for negotiation with my paper, The Herald. I'm hoping that I may be able to keep on the column. But my tip of a landslide has actually proved out quite well.
I suppose you feel rather self-righteous about that, because you got terribly told off for saying it's going to be a landslide, and look what's happened.
Well, perhaps if I'd been allowed to keep on saying it, it wouldn't have happened, Jonathan. So perhaps they were right to suggest that I shouldn't repeat that. But we have had a tremendous support. And I have to say, I find it both moving and, in a way, humbling. The British people have put tremendous trust in us, and we must now make sure that we repay that trust and that we do not abuse it in any way.
Which takes me to the serious point. Is it not, when you've been in opposition for a long time, increasingly effectively till you emerge in power, it must be quite daunting to know that you have to face things like negotiations in Amsterdam, that you have to face the responsibilities of a budget coming up. It can't but be daunting if you're a human being.
it wouldn't be half as daunting, Jonathan, as the idea of going back into opposition for another 5 years. And we welcome the challenge of office, and we've been preparing for that challenge of office. On Amsterdam, for instance, we have been following the negotiations very carefully. We've been talking to our sister parties in Europe. We know what the state of play is. We know where to pick up. And we are the only party in opposition that ever produces a manifesto a year in advance of the election. We spelt out our policies. We've been working on those policies. We're ready to hit the ground running.
With the kind of majority that you're going to have of around 180, is that going to give rather more freedom to independent-minded backbenchers on the left, or whether they're anti-European, to speak their mind without being jumped on?
A majority of 180, Jonathan, is my idea of a working majority. And I don't anticipate that we will have any trouble on the basis of any discipline. I'm quite sure we'll get our business through, and it will be very comfortable to have that margin. I think what we will be able to offer Britain now are a number of Labour backbenchers of ability, of talent, of drive, who will be able to make their own voice heard in the chamber of the House of Commons, pursuing their own particular interests, ventilating them and airing them.
You have been one of the architects of the programme of constitutional reform, whether it is Scotland, whether it's the House of Lords, and particularly the commitment to deliver a referendum on proportional representation, to which you yourself are attracted. Is it possible, in your judgment, that this could have been the last election to be fought on first past the post? Is that a possibility?
Well, we are committed to a referendum on proportional representation, and we will deliver on that commitment as we will on all others. We have looked very carefully at the timetable, and the fact is, Jonathan, nobody could give a guarantee that that referendum will be held at a time which will enable us then to deliver a new system in time for the next general election. We'll try and hold the referendum as soon as possible, but that still leaves you a very tight timetable to turn around any change in legislation for the next election, and we've always recognised that. It's really down to the British people. It will be their choice in the referendum, and if they make a choice loud and clear, then Parliament will, of course, do its best, its level best to implement that.
And may one presume that when there is that referendum, which is going to offer a choice of the status quo or whatever the Commission comes up with as a form of proportional representation, that you will be out there campaigning for proportional representation?
My position on this is well known, well understood, and there is no going back on it, Jonathan. The issue of proportional representation, of course, was never for this election. We always knew this election would have to be fought on the first past the post system and have to be won, and we won it handsomely. The issue of the proportional representation is for the future, and it's for the British people to make their judgment in a referendum.
I'll let you go back to watching the dancing or joining in if you get the mood. Robin Cook, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good night. And now we've got in 536 results. Time to have a look at some of those that have been coming in while we've been talking on my results computer. Here we have Birmingham Hall Green. This is the Labour gain. This was the seat that was marginal in Birmingham and easily fell in this election. Swing from Conservative to Labour, no less than 14%, a little bit above the national average, but easy enough to get it. Medway, Labour gain Medway, the majority of just over 5,000. And the swing from Conservative to Labour, 14.9%. Note that one of the grand old figures of the Tory party, Peggy Fenner, has gone down in this sea change election. Richmond Park is a Liberal Democrat gain, majority of 2,901. And another Tory bigwig has gone, Jeremy Hanley, who was for a time chairman of the party, and now a Foreign Office Minister, still a Foreign Office Minister at the moment. He is out as well. And the swing from Conservative to Liberal Democrats just under 10%. And here is Redditch, another Labour gain, majority of 6,000 here. The swing from Conservative to Labour, 10%. And Jacqueline Smith, one of the many women who's come in on the women-only shortlist on these big swings. There are going to be very many more women in the next House of Commons. Eltham is a Labour gain, majority of 10,000. The swing from Conservative to Labour of 13.6%. So there, the results coming in as Labour sweeps across the country. And now John Suchet is there. I can see outside Tory party headquarters with a slightly forlorn slogan beside you saying, "Britain is booming, don't let Labour ruin it." John, it looks extraordinarily quiet behind you.
Yes, it's building up though, Jonathan. They may be dancing to Dee Ream at the Festival Hall. Here it's a very different story. Security tightening up behind me, as you can probably see. They know that John Major is on his way by road from Huntingdon. He's expected here within the next hour. Senior party members and officials have been arriving. Lord Cranborne, leader of the Conservatives in the Lords, arrived a little while ago, shaking his head, saying, absolutely dreadful result, dreadful result. I saw Maurice Saatchi arrive, the man charged with masterminding the Conservatives' advertising campaign, of course. He didn't say anything to anyone, vanished quickly upstairs. And I'm told by a very senior source here that Lady Thatcher, although not in this building at the moment, has been watching the results come in overnight. She's said to be absolutely devastated. We've been warned that John Major may well not speak when he arrives here. He may just come in here, straight through the doors and straight upstairs. It's not yet clear. He may, on the other hand, speak. No one knows quite what mood he'll be in when he arrives here.
John, we'll join you again when John Major arrives and see him come in. Thanks very much. Michael, you don't expect that John Major will have a great deal to say except privately to his team, because he'll have to do a lot of comforting, because you have to do that. Yes. One of the problems of leader is you have to say, folks, we did our best, and you have to go around saying thank you.
He's always mindful of the fact that people do work very hard for him, party workers have worked very hard for him, and he'll certainly want to go and have a word with them and talk about that. A couple of thoughts that have been passing through my mind as we've been watching all this. You know the way we used to think of the Liberal Democrats. We were talking about the Labour tide, of course, during the course of the day. The thought associated with the Liberal Democrats were particular areas. Well, now we've got this sort of London pocket of the Liberal Democrats down in the southwest, because they've now got Kingston, they've now got Richmond, the new seat of Richmond Park, they've now got Twickenham, they've now got Sutton. That's quite a big change in that area. A lot of local councils down there, of course, but they've now got parliamentary MPs. And the other thing is that, of course, we've been focusing on the big names that have gone, but there are a couple of big names, of course, who ran, or whatever the verb is, who did the run. Peter Lilly, for example, moved across from St Albans to Hitchin and has got back, so he will be there. And Nicholas Soames, of course, famously from Crawley to Mid Sussex, so he's back there. So there will be some formidable characters still around in the Conservative Party. I think they're going to need them. I think they're going to need some people to steady their nerves.
A terrific shortage of the top quality. We can have a look now, I think, at one or two of the seats that are coming in. Henley is due to be coming pretty soon, and Derbyshire South. Can we have a look at... Here's Henley. This is Michael Heseltine's seat. This is going to be safe, and he's got no problems getting in there. And here is Derbyshire South. And now we go from Derbyshire South to Billericay.
Robert Buchanan, Pro-Life Alliance, 570. Teresa Ellen Gorman, Official Conservative, 22,033. Brian Robert John Owen Hughes, Loyal Conservative, 3,377. Paul Adrian Richards, Labour, 20,677. Geoffrey Williams, Liberal Democrat, 8,763.
So, no problem for Teresa Gorman. She holds on there. It'll be interesting to see the result. Majority of 1,356. Not so easy. Look, Teresa Gorman, 22,000. Labour, 20,500. Liberal Democrats on just under 9,000. The swing from Conservative to Labour, 17,500.
First of all of you here this evening who have worked so hard and so late to produce these two counts.
Teresa Gorman is giving the normal congratulations, but she said to us earlier that it was all about Europe. It hasn't done her much good here. She jolly nearly could have lost the seat. The swing against her was enormous.
Extremely hard in the campaign for me, and most particularly my agent, Ron Turner, and my mentor, who has seen me through now 2 successful election campaigns. And my husband, who of course is giving me enormous support.
So we'll leave Teresa Gorman saying thank you to her husband and to everyone who's worked for her there. She is back in, but I bet there was something of a shock for her there, don't you, Mike?
It was a close thing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. Teresa has been used to sweeping back. She's a great lady for sweeps, and she tends to sort of sweep in wherever she goes. She darn nearly didn't sweep in there.
But it is true, on the particular point of Europe, which she was making so much of, it is evident from the results so far, in that insofar as someone said, I am Eurosceptic or I am anti-single currency, it hasn't done them any good when other things have been played. It's not been, as so many have said, Europe on the doorstep, Europe on the doorstep, just as she was claiming.
Absolutely right. As I said earlier, Euroscepticism has done nobody any good this evening. But of course, what people did know, they knew precisely what the Labour Party's position was. They seem to have massively endorsed that, and of course the Liberal Democrats as well.
We're now in Henley again, waiting to hear that Michael Heseltine is almost certainly held on here. He's waiting for silence, the returning officer. We can't hear him. No, he's about to go.
I hereby give notice that the number of votes recorded for each candidate at the election for the Henley constituency is as follows. Nigel Vivian Piers Barlow. Natural law. 221. Duncan Shaw Thomas Enright.
Labour.
11,700. Michael Ray Dibdin Heseltine.
Conservative.
23,908. Thomas Roderick Hibbert.
Whig.
160. Timothy Richard Horton.
Liberal Democrat.
12,741. Susan Miles.
Green.
514. Sebastian Charles Sainsbury.
Referendum.
2,299. And I hereby declare that Michael Ray Dibdin Heseltine has been duly elected as member for the constituency.
Still Deputy Prime Minister, he's there. The swing from Conservative to Liberal Democrat, though, 7.2%, but nothing like enough to move him from that rock-safe seat.
Mr. Returning Officer, can I thank you and all your staff for bringing us satisfactorily through the arduous effort of counting both the constituency for Parliament and, of course, of dividing out the county results. And thank you very much for your long patience this evening. May I also thank the police for providing their customary excellent service in looking after us all in what has, in this particular election, been a particularly worrying time. Can I thank all of my supporters and all of my constituents who have elected me and say that I will do all I can to serve them in the years that lie ahead, whether they voted for me or not, in the traditions of British parliamentary democracy. Can I thank all those candidates who were not able to secure election here tonight for what has been an exemplary election campaign in the Henley division. You can't win them all, I say to you. I wish you all better luck, but in some other constituency next time. But I would just perhaps say one brief word. I was first elected to Parliament in 1966. It was a Labour landslide, and people spent a great deal of time and trouble worrying about the future of the Tory party. 4 years later, we were back. See you around.
You can't put a good man down. He will never accept defeat, even when he's truly defeated. He's always saying he's going to be back soon, and you never know. David Evans, the outspoken right-wing Eurosceptic, is out in Welwyn Hatfield, gained by the Labour Party. He was, again, very fiercely, amongst other things, anti-Europe. It doesn't seem to have done him much good there. Jackie Ashley is with the Lib Dems. Now we are on 35 seats already, and 46 we are predicting to be their majority. And Jackie, Liberal Democrats have just gained Devon, West and Torridge, the seat that was Tory when Emma Nicholson had it before she defected to the Liberal Democrats.
That's right, a huge cheer has just gone up here, Jonathan, and Emma Nicholson was absolutely jubilant, waving her arms in the air. I think the two words I've heard most often this evening have been amazing and astonishing. People here are absolutely delighted with what's been happening, not only for themselves, where the results are far exceeding their expectations, but also what Labour's doing as well, because of course that Labour and the Liberal Democrats have been in talks about constitutional reform, and they're saying that Labour's landslide will ensure, they hope, great progress on constitutional reform.
There is this feeling that that they're each rejoicing in each other's result.
I think that's right. Huge cheers are going up, not only when the Liberal Democrats have been making the gains they've been making, but when all of the Tory cabinet ministers, William Waldegrave, Michael Portillo, Ian Lang, as each of those have lost their seats, a huge cheer has gone up. I think perhaps the biggest cheer of the night, though, was when Martin Bell won in Tatton, because, of course, the Liberal Democrats and Labour stood down there for him. So it is very much a feeling that this is a victory against the Conservatives for Labour and the Liberal Democrats, who certainly on some things, such as constitutional reform, will be working together.
Jackie, it has to be said it's a somewhat more decorous affair in your restaurant there. than the extraordinary goings-on at the festival hall. Do you think that's just Lib Demery?
It is more decorous. I think it's a smaller affair altogether, Jonathan. Certainly a good quantity of beer and wine is being drunk, and I've also seen some champagne, though I'm told we're promised some more later on when Paddy Ashdown arrives. We're expecting him 15, 20 minutes or so, but there's no music and there's no dancing, but I wouldn't really call it decorous.
We'll be back with you, Jackie, before long. We've got 555 results in so far. The Conservatives have got 120 seats at the moment, Labour 389, the Liberal Democrats 35. The swing is 10.3, which allows us to go to Alistair and his battleground. Alistair.
Jonathan, thanks very much indeed. Just want to concentrate for a brief moment, if I can, on the Liberal Democrat battleground and maybe try and throw one thought forward to explain why they're a little bit quiet at Lib Dem headquarters, because my theory is they can't quite believe what they've done. Nationally, the Liberal Democrat share of the vote is actually down by 1.3%. And yet here we have it. This is their list of target seats, and they've knocked off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 of them. Obviously, Labour have come in here, Oldham West and Conway, Liverpool, Wavertree, and held there. And even down in Wells and Eastbourne, the Liberal Democrats did have once on a by-election, but the Tories have held there. The tribute to tactical voting and targeting of those key seats is quite extraordinary, because also well beyond these seats they've also taken Harrogate, they've taken Carshalton, North Avon, Sutton and Cheam, Sheffield Hallam, Richmond Park, and they've also taken Kingston Surbiton. So the national share of the vote is down for the Liberal Democrats, but they have made 23 gains, 2 losses, and we're still saying at the end of the day they'll have 46 members in the new House of Commons. An extraordinary result for the Liberal Democrats, Jonathan.
Thank you. We've been following Tony Blair's journey from his home to the Sedgefield Count to Teesside Airport, and I think we can now pick him up, but he's just about arrived in Stansted, and we can find him there on his way to the Festival Hall to join the Jollities. There he is. He's just out of his plane. No, not him. One of his team. No, there he is indeed, walking down the steps. A cheerful and happy man being welcomed there by, I suspect, the staff at the airport. Sherry aside, and a kiss for whoever it was. It obviously wasn't a member of the staff. Mike.
Yes, it's
there we
a far
are.
cry, isn't it, from Harold Wilson coming down on the steam train from Liverpool. You now hire a sleek private jet to bring you down, and then he'll be on his way to... That's going to be a heck of a party when he gets to the festival.
It certainly is. But he, of course, will also be mindful, I may be wrong, he will be mindful of the fact now that, you know, within the next, 12 hours or so, certainly 15 hours, he is going to be the Prime Minister of this country. And I suspect that when he goes to that party, of course he's going to be very happy, but he will behave with a certain amount of that in his mind.
Well, I thought we saw that, didn't we? Even in the speeches up in his constituency, he was talking about the humility, the sense of duty and so on, and that will be very much on his mind.
Here we are. He's still there, looking happy, waving at people who are supporting him. What a moment this must be for any person who's achieved the highest office in a land which he has now done. The burdens are in front of him. He can now relax, talk to key members of the staff. You never know, they might have voted for him. I expect they're telling him they voted for him. However they voted, people tend to do that.
I see there's
congratulating him.
Police car waiting there. Presumably that's going to escort him certainly off the airfield.
Well, his life now becomes a life of police cars and outriders.
The security will now clamp around him, of course.
Into the back of the car that he's been driving around in during his campaign, I think, the Daimler or Jaguar that he's been
another
having.
Liberal Dane gain button tripping through their Oxford West and Abingdon, by the way. So they continue to build up as well.
And we've got, incidentally, Mark Lennox Boyd, whose famous name in Tory politics is out in Morecambe and Lunesdale. Labour have gained there. And we've... Bill Cash has held on for Stone, but he ought to have done. It was quite a safe seat. One of the Eurosceptics that is still in there. Labour have gained Loughborough. Stephen Dorrell moved from Loughborough because he lost his seat there to a new seat, which is going to be much safer for him. He ought to keep, which we won't know. I think we don't get that result till tomorrow, but Labour has gained Loughborough.
Charnwood, yes.
Charnwood is much safer.
And again, a couple more chicken runs were the right thing to do. Stephen Dorrell, talked of as a possible future leader of the Labour Party, and Brian Mulwiney, of course, who moved out of Peterborough. Labour picked up Peterborough, as we expected they would.
Let's have a look now with 360 results in. Let's have a look at a headline. And here we have The majority, we're now predicting 183 on the basis of the results so far in 560 seats. Labour has 393 already. The Conservatives have 120. The Liberal Democrats have 36. And here is an update on Labour's position. Their vote is up by 9%, the predicted majority, the highest ever in the history of the Labour Party. That means this century and a little bit before. And Tony Blair has said it. He said it once, he said it twice. I will repay the people's trust. And he's offered varieties of that thought this evening, tonight, this morning. The Conservative vote, look at that, down 11%. The lowest number of seats in Parliament this time we are predicting since 1906. They have now no seats in Scotland. Michael Portillo told us not very long ago it was a truly terrible night. And here are the Lib Dems, who Jackie Ashley was telling us have done so well. Their vote is down 1%. We put this earlier on to the Lib Dems. Their vote might be down, even though their seats went up. So you've got this extraordinary situation that Alistair was pointing to. Vote down 1%, but they've got the highest number of third-party seats since 1923. Understandably, they've targeted very, very effectively and beyond, and Paddy Ashdown therefore says it has been a terrific campaign. Michael Portillo, one of the very big scalps to be taken in Enfield Southgate. Ian Lang is out. Neil Hamilton is out in Tatton. And who else? Malcolm Rifkin gone from Edinburgh Pentlands. Michael Forsyth out from Stirling. William Walgrave out from Bristol West. Angela Rumbold is out. Jerry Hayes and Giles Brandreth is out. Back to his sweaters and television, perhaps. And now I think in the festival hall we can join Peter Mandelson, who came down on the plane with Tony Blair. Peter Mandelson, you've got safely to the festival hall. I presume that Tony Blair must be there as well, or about to be there.
No, I came down a little ahead of him, Jonathan. He's following behind.
Now, look, what we wanted, we were speculating about this. There's been a fantastic party that you've missed part of down there, with Dee Ream keeping everyone leaping around the floor, and even Robin Cook virtually taking to the floor, but just
and
maintaining.
I'll be next.
And you'll be next. Now, how's Tony Blair going to be treated, and what's he going to say there? Is he going to try and make a speech in that atmosphere, or what?
Well, he wants to make a speech because he wants to thank all the people who have made this campaign and our victory possible, and that's why he was very keen indeed that we should have this event tonight, this results event, and a very big thank you to all the people who have made this possible. And I'm sure he'll wish to speak. I think he feels in a rather sober state. He feels a tremendous sense of responsibility and humility. I talked to him earlier this evening before I flew down myself from Teesside, and he was feeling in that mood. I think he's in a mood to thank everyone, but then to roll up his sleeves and get on with the job.
It's very easy to forget in the celebration that's going on there. I mean, it hardly looks like the traditional political gathering. It looks much more like a great, massive...
Jonathan, there's nothing traditional about New Labour apart from our basic values.
Oh, I thought we might have to hear something like that. And it's very interesting to see the basic values going on behind you there. But anyway, given the burden of office that he now takes up, it is an extraordinary thing to suddenly take over the highest office in the land. It would be surprising if he didn't feel pretty sober, albeit very delighted. You would be a very irresponsible character if you were just dancing around.
But you know, the remarkable thing about Tony Blair is that although obviously he hasn't been in government before, he hasn't held ministerial office, he has the same approach to everything that he does. He works things out from first principles. He makes sure that the conclusions he reaches are right, that the people around him know exactly what he wants. He has a very clear sense of purpose and what needs to be achieved, and then he puts the people in place to carry out the job that needs to be done. And that's been the hallmark of his leadership since he took over in 1994, and I am very confident indeed that he'll carry on in exactly the same way when he enters number 10 Downing Street tomorrow.
I suppose in a way New Labour is very much like a sort of traditional middle-of-the-road concentric Conservative Party, isn't it?
Well, I tell you one thing about New Labour now. We've formed a very broad base in the country. We have a coalition of support, and that needs to translate into government too. I think that Tony Blair will want to lead a very pluralist, broadly based government. He will want to govern as he has been elected. as New Labour, commanding support from a very wide constituency in the country. And he's not going to betray that trust
Peter,
now.
excuse me cutting you off. We're going to Braintree to find the result there. It's an important result. Tony Newton under potential pressure here. A swing of 11.6 would remove Tony Newton, the Leader of the House, from this seat. Let's hear the result.
As the acting returning officer for the Braintree constituency, I hereby give notice that the total number of votes given for each candidate at the election was as follows. Abbott James Edward, Green Party candidate for Euro referendum, 712. Ellis Trevor Keith, Liberal Democrat, 6,418. Hurst Alan Arthur, the Labour Party candidate, 23,729. Newton Anthony Harold, the Conservative Party candidate, 22,000.
So that says it. Look at Tony Newton's face, the bleak knowledge that he has lost and Labour has gained Braintree.
Nolan Michael Anthony, commonly called Buster, New Millennium, New Way hemp
Tony
candidate.
Newton had been here since 1974, on the front bench since 1979, one of the longest serving members of the Conservative government of the last 18 years, much liked, incidentally, on all sides of the House and very much respected. There will be many, Labour as well as Tory, who will regret his departure. He can't have imagined it would happen. Look at it. Majority 1,451. Labour Party in with 23,729 votes. Tony Newton 22,278. The swing from Conservative to Labour 12.9%. And here is the change in the share of the vote. 15.3% up to Labour, Conservatives down 10.5%, and the Liberal Democrats down. We're talking about them getting a lower share of the vote nationally, down just under 10%. So Tony Newton is out. Yet another former cabinet minister hits the ropes.
You know, they say that all political careers end in tears, and it's a particularly tearful sort of atmosphere around Tony Newton. As you said, one of the nicest men in the Commons, continuously a minister since 79. He's had a lot of personal problems to deal with his daughter and so on, and now he gets a kick in the teeth or a kick in the backside, as so many of his colleagues have this evening.
Thanks. While Tony Blair was flying down to London, we had a camera inside there, and I'm told that there's some very interesting things that were happening on that plane. So let's go and have a look at what it was.
He's got my notes. He's got the notes. Okay, John, get used to this.
This is relaxation, real relaxation. And Alistair Campbell sitting on the left, just out of sight there, talking about the notes, presumably for the speech he's going to make when he gets into the festival hall. Jumping around. This is the intimacy of power. Not often that you will get after this, that sort of access on a prime ministerial plane. They're talking about the seats that they won. Finchley, they won Finchley.
Alistair Campbell, of course, to play a key role, will be the press secretary, has guided Tony Blair's presentational side of things during the campaign constantly. Alistair always says, don't talk to me about policy, strategy is my game.
When we touch down, I can speak to John Prescott.
Yeah.
Did you hear that? Asking one of his assistants, Angie, to make sure he can speak to John Prescott, because he obviously wants to share notes on this victory.
Well, as I was saying, John Prescott's going to be the first person into Downing Street to see him tomorrow. And is that another cup of tea? He's been surviving on tea during this.
Looks like an awful lot of milk going into that tea.
Well, a lot of milk going into that tea, but he's been running on tea like Tony Benn used to.
He also takes sugar in his tea. All these details will become immensely important once he's Prime Minister. Does he take sugar will be the question that everyone now has an answer to. It was interesting, of course he knows that the cameras are there, and I suspect that he's a canny politician. When he said, I want to speak to John Prescott, it wouldn't surprise me that he wanted people to know that he wanted to speak to John Prescott, to allow John Prescott to share in his success.
And John Prescott is going to be Deputy Prime Minister.
I don't think we can hear much of what they're saying. There's Cherry, of course, his wife is sitting immediately opposite him, just wiping an eye. You can't blame her. It's been a very long day, a long campaign and a long night.
Ah.
There, that's the moment, isn't it?
That's it.
That's the moment. That is
That's it.
husband and wife. In this studio, there's a lot of oohing and ahhing as people watch that. But
well,
back to the speech notes.
She has been a tremendous help to him during the campaign. One or two people wondered whether Sherry would take to political life. She was plainly rather tense about it all at the beginning. But look at that. Look at that. She's now going to be part of the team on the phone.
She is, but she's also going back into professional life.
Yes,
she's going to sit as a recorder in 2 weeks' time.
She's
a very high-powered
going
lawyer.
to keep up her legal work one or 2 days a week.
I think she's...
Look at that. She's happy and enjoying it.
I think she's slightly feeling... That must be enough pictures now, isn't it? Let me relax. No, he doesn't. Alistair Campbell saying, I don't like it. Alistair Campbell looking more relaxed than he normally allows himself to be seen.
You know,
he is regarded by the media as the tough thug of the Labour Party, booting the media around until he gets what he wants.
I can tell you from experience, it hasn't been like that.
Hasn't it?
Alistair has played a very, very straight game. He feels he's had a good message. The famous days of when he, shall we say, had a physical exchange with one of my colleagues, those have gone.
But he'll be very disappointed that you say he hasn't been tough, because that is
his
image.
I don't mean that. He has been tough, but he's done it in a rather more mellow way, I think. And incidentally, he'll take over a very nice large office in Downing Street.
When he becomes the Chief Press Secretary.
Yeah.
They won't forget this journey down, I bet you. It'll go into the memoirs, it'll go into their history books,
you can see there
the political records.
Alistair's yawning his head off. He has been pretty much exhausted, though he did call me at one stage during the campaign from the touchline of a school football match when we wanted to have a conversation, and he said, before you say anything, Michael, I want you to know that my young son has just scored a damn good goal.
They will be glad to know that Labour has gained Reading East, and the Transport Minister John Watts is out, although he actually fled there from the marginal seat of Slough to what he must have hoped was a safer seat.
Well, that's a chicken run that didn't work.
However, Brian Mulwiney, who allegedly did one of these chicken runs in the new seat of Cambridgeshire North West, is safely back in. His old seat, Peterborough, of course, went down. So perhaps we'll leave Tony Blair in those... Leave him in his plane there. He's jolly nearly back at jolly nearly down, I should think, now in the Festival Hall. Incidentally, the count at Derbyshire South has been postponed. We will go there as soon as we can. Let's meanwhile with, let me see, 573 results in. Let's have a look now at some of them. Here we have, at 436, Labour has won. Our predicted majority is 181. We'll get some more of those stacks in a moment. Here we are. Chatham and Aylesford, Labour have gained with a majority of 2,790. The swing from Conservative to Labour there, 15.1%. Alistair Goodlad is back in the House. They will be glad of that, because he could have gone on the swings that we've been getting. Milton Keynes North East, Labour have gained with a majority just of 240. Thought to have been a safe Tory seat. A 14% swing was needed. It went on a swing of 14.2%.
That is astonishing. I know Peter Butler quite well, and he will be absolutely shattered by that.
Absolutely. Ribble South, Labour have gained with a majority of just over 5,000. Another big figure has gone down. Robert Atkins is out. He was a former minister. The swing from Conservative to Labour there, slightly less than some of these big ones, 12%, but above the national average. Morecambe and Lonsdale won by Labour with a majority of just under 6,000. The swing from Conservative to Labour there, 16%. So, well, in Hatfield, Labour have gained as well, the majority of 5,500. This is the David Evans seat. David Evans, thought to have been Evans the mouth, and said some things that have caused a lot of offence to lots of people. Anyway, it hasn't helped him there to be offensive. He's got out, and the swing from Conservative to Labour is 11%. Labour is in there. Melanie Johnson, who was very much insulted, incidentally, by Evans, because she was an unmarried mother, and he attacked her, or seemed to attack her for that, and didn't withdraw the words afterwards. So we can have a look now, perhaps. I said that Brian Mulwiney was back in. Let's have a look to see how he did it, or what he was doing.
I congratulate Mr. Blair and the Labour Party on their victory. I wish them well as they govern our country. In opposition, we will support them when we believe that they are doing that which is in the national interest, and we will oppose them with reasoned argument when we believe that they are not. But they have done well, and we have not done well. and we will need to reflect on that and the lessons that emerge from it in the days that lie ahead. But that is for the days that lie ahead. In the meantime, there is a job to be done. Thank you for giving me the honour of doing it.
Brian Mulwiney, who of course as party chairman was in control of the Tory party campaign, and he, like other senior figures, saying let's not have our rows now, but there will inevitably be recriminations, and there will undoubtedly be a lot of people who will want to point the gun at Dr. Mulwiney's head, saying you ran the campaign, it went off the rails. We actually heard the former Chancellor saying that it was most unfortunate that the debate had been all about Europe when it should have been about the economy, though he certainly didn't blame Brian Mulwiney for that. Now, with these 577 results in, panel's been watching them all coming in, watching these heads rolling and the Labour celebrations. Sue, what's the thoughts up there?
Well, we've been watching Tony Blair with you inside his aeroplane as well, and I think the less than serious conclusion we've come to here is that we're not really very interested whether Tony Blair takes sugar in his tea or not. And by the way, his wife's name is Cherie. But what the serious issue is crossing our minds is whether Labour needed to have moved so far into the middle ground to capture votes. With this kind of swing, perhaps they could have hung on to a few of those traditional policies. They may have held on to their principles, as Peter Mantelson was saying, but those policies got thrown away and you didn't like it, did you, Evelyn Wake?
No, I did not like it.
What do you think they should have held on to?
They should have held on to, they should have taken back the water industry. They should have taken back the rail industry.
Renationalise.
Renationalise, call it whatever you like, but they should have taken it into public control.
And what about tax?
Tax should have gone up for the big spenders.
What, over 100,000?
Definitely.
Should have had the 50p
They
rate.
should have had the 50p rate
And
of
they'd
tax.
still have got in, you think?
And I'm sure they would have got in, because I'm convinced that the Conservatives have lost it, as opposed to just Labour winning everything.
I'm going to move down to Karen Kopp, because you did a very peculiar thing. Well, I don't know whether it's peculiar, but unusual it seems to me that you were a traditional Labour, an old Labour supporter, and you voted Conservative.
Yeah, I did change and vote Conservative because in '92 I believed in what Labour was proposing and I'd had enough of Conservative Party. But I've seen Tony Blair change his party dramatically. It's not new Labour, it's unrecognisable. And I just didn't agree with what he was proposing and believe he would sell us out to Europe faster than the Conservatives would.
Few of the posters, of course, said New Labour. Tony Blair says New Labour. I think Gordon Brown says New Labour. Most others just call it Labour still.
Most others call it Labour, but it's not recognisable as the Labour that I voted for in '92.
So you're happy with your vote for the Conservatives?
I'm still happy with it.
And what do you think of the result tonight?
I think the result, as my colleagues were saying, it was tactical negative voting just to get the Conservatives out. They weren't happy with the last 18 years and they wanted change.
Okay, thanks very much indeed. Back to you, Jonathan.
Thank you, and to our panel there, we're going to see you again tomorrow. It's been very nice having you sharing this election with us. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow. If you're going to get a bit of kit, but I expect and hope that you're going to go on watching this all the way through. Look forward to seeing you. Meanwhile, we'll have a summary. And Labour has won the election, of course, the predicted majority. 179 now is the predicted majority. 581 seats are in out of the 659 that will be in altogether by the end of tomorrow. Labour's got 401 of them, past that winning post of 330. Conservatives so far 132, the Liberal Democrats 37, and the rest on 11. And here are some of the Labour results. They've gained Morecambe, they've gained Harrow East, they've gained Wimbledon, they've gained Castle Point. And some Conservative results. They lost Tatton, of course, they lost Perth, they lost Tayside North, and they held on, that's with the former Home Secretary, to Folkestone and Hythe. And here are some Liberal Democrat results. Some of their gains: Kingston and Surbiton, Richmond Park, Hereford, Oxford West and Abingdon. A host of them. John Major, the Prime Minister, still has said, we have been comprehensively defeated. John Redwood has said, I'm not discussing the leadership. We need to look to John Major, our leader. So, a lot of dignity, attempted dignity in the Conservative Party, trying to hold it together even as it is in the point of collapse. Incidentally, it looks as though Sebastian Coe is in trouble in Falmouth. It wouldn't be surprising given the swings, although the results are not expected in until another 2.5 hours or so. So, Mike, I see George Young is back in. He moved to Hampshire North, didn't he?
Yes, he was another one who moved out from Ealing Acton, and Michael Mates is back, but it's the people who... Michael Mates was sitting on a giant majority in a new seat there, or the seat was split. So some of the familiar faces will be back, but my goodness me, it's going to be a very different House of Commons. So many new faces to learn for a start, and the atmosphere will be entirely different. They always talk about the House of Commons as being rather like a gentleman's club, but this time with so many young faces, so many more women in the House, it's going to be very different.
We now can see, I think, Paddy Ashdown arriving here looking very cheerful.
It's a vindication of everything we stood for, everything we campaigned for. We'll now go into the next Parliament armed with those votes and a much more powerful group of Liberal Democrat members of Parliament to fight for the things that we brought to the front in this campaign. Education, health, constitutional reform. It's a special achievement for my good friend, close colleague and the campaign chairman, Richard Home.
That figure is surely far beyond your expectations.
We thought we'd do better than you thought we'd do, but not as well as this.
How about the Labour landslide?
Straight ahead of
Yeah, listen to those cheers for him in Yeovil. He's had a good night and he knows it. Meets there Lord Home, his campaign manager and organiser, outside Limdeb headquarters, not in Yeovil of course, but in London, outside the restaurant in Hyde Park Corner, which they've chosen, and Lord Home there is welcoming him as he goes in for their celebration. What a happy face he is showing. This is genuine delight, because even though the share of the vote may be down a touch, this is a remarkable turnaround for the Liberal Democrats. They've got 37 seats already, and we are still predicting that they're likely to have 46, and they know it.
They ran a most effective campaign, and of course they were doing it with nothing like the resources of the other two big parties. I remember at one stage they said, no, we've only got one poster because we can't afford any more.
He spent a lot of time saying, vote for what you believe in, but leaving open the thought that if you're Labour, vote Liberal Democrat in the seats where Liberal Democrat can win, and vice versa. And in fact, I don't know, our analysts will tell us more about this later on and tomorrow, but my guess is that people, certainly in the Liberal Democrat seats, people have gone for the Liberal Democrats where the Lib Dems can win.
Well, I'm sure that's right. I'm in a constituency I know well, Twickenham. That is certainly...
Paddy in just a moment, but I want to...
Lord Home now introducing Paddy Ashdown.
Two thank yous. First of all to Peter Boyzo, who's been a wonderful host this evening.
This is the host at the restaurant, which we don't name, so we'll be advertising it, but it's famous.
And second, I want to say thank you to a terrific campaign team. We deserve this result, but it's you who worked for it so hard who really get the credit. But most of all, the person who gets the credit, and he deserves it. What a campaign. Paddy.
Delighted Liberal Democrats waiting for their leader to thank them and to say he's going to take them on to even greater things, I bet you. When he gets a chance.
I see we brought the high-tech soapbox all the way, but not at this stage the helicopter. Richard, the whole of the campaign team, you have been absolutely stunning. I can't tell you what it's been like out there, and I know I speak for all my parliamentary colleagues, and there are now many more than there were before. The way that you have fought this campaign under the superb direction of Richard, who's done so stunningly for all of us. And now we have a lot of work to do. We are the largest force of Liberal Democrats and Liberals that this country has had since the days of Lloyd George. And we will use that force, we will use the vote that people have given us in the next Parliament with a hugely increased number of Liberal Democrat members of Parliament to fight every minute, every second, every hour through the next Parliament for those things that we have campaigned for in this election. Education and investing in education, tackling the crisis of our health service, bringing a new kind of honesty to our politics, and you know they told us we couldn't do it and win votes, but we did. And fighting now to be the cornerstone, the rock upon which we can build a new and modern constitution for our country that will begin to rebuild the bridge between the government and the governed, and bring about, ladies and gentlemen, bring about, colleagues, what I believe will be a parliament of historic reform in this country in the years ahead.
A party of historic reform, he says. Party of historic reform. And we can go to Brian Marwini. I think, Mr. Marwini, congratulations on holding your seat.
Thank you.
But that's about the only bit of crumb of comfort since we spoke 4 hours or so ago that you've had.
Yes, it's not been a good night for the Conservative Party. It has been a good night for Mr. Blair and the Labour Party, and I congratulate them. I wish them well as they govern this country.
Don't worry, we can still hear you if you can keep up against that background.
I wish them well as they seek to govern our country, for we want our country well governed. The truth is that the British people decided that it was time for a change after 18 years, and despite the fact that we have some of the best economic news that this country has seen for a couple of generations.
Time for a change, was it, you think, fundamentally?
I think that's what the evidence appears to show. It shows that...
You're doing all right. We can still hear you if you can hear yourself.
I'm sorry.
Is that going on for you? What are they cheering? He's wandered off. You can't blame him because he couldn't hear a word. Someone, I don't know what that's all about, but it's young Tories there, clearly. Certainly the woman dressed in red with the great blue rosette. Anyway, don't know what's going on. What we did hear was that he had that he said that it was the swing. What did he? I just want to pick up one thing with you, if I could, Mike. We've got here, there's a footnote, if you like, to this election, but an important footnote is the referendum party.
Yes.
John Aspinall in Folkestone got 8%, the biggest share so far of the referendum party. George Gardner in Reigate got 7%, and the candidate in Hastings, so our analysts tell us, saved his deposit there and probably cost the Conservatives the seat. So the referendum party, which is on 2.6%, just below the 3% that they might have hoped to get, well, they've got 715,000 votes so far. Still jolly expensive, but maybe registering in one or two places. David Bellamy as well, we saw in Huntingdon.
Well, just a bit, but I don't think it's had any influence on the outcome, because once all the main parties were promising a referendum, of course, on Europe, then the vote for the referendum party had very, very much less impact.
Gillian Shepherd is back in Norfolk South. I mean, she was likely to get back in.
Well, she was likely to get back in. As I said, I talked to her earlier, and she was not at all certain, even there, what was going on. She is one of those who very, very much wants John Major to stay on for a bit, to lead the party. She's very adamant about that.
There's quite a sort of orchestrated stay on, please.
There's a keep Major.
Absolutely. We can go perhaps hear what Tony Newton now has to say. Mr. Newton, we were saying while you were in Braintree, we were saying that you were universally liked in the House of Commons, which is not usual, and we offer to all who lose commiserations. It's rather a bleak night for you personally as well as for the party, yes?
Well, obviously it's a very sad and disappointing night for me, but the kind words that you've just said have been echoed here and have given me some comfort in the really very kind words that my opponents have said about my work as MP over the last 23 years.
Now, you've been on the front bench since 1979. You are as long-serving as any other minister in the Conservative Party.
That is right.
You could not have expected that you would get this swing against you, 11.5%. In fact, it was more than that. What was the reason?
Well, you've interviewed all sorts of people during the evening, and I've seen some of the reactions to that question. The swing here, as far as I can see, I haven't really worked it out in detail, but seems to have been somewhat less in some places, and I can take some satisfaction in that. If you're going to ask me within 10 minutes of the result being declared, to give you some great analysis of the reasons.
Forgive me interrupting you. We're going to Derbyshire South. Do stay there. Edwina Curry's marginal seat.
And I do so as follows. I, David J. Dugdale, being acting returning officer for the South Derbyshire constituency, hereby give notice that the total number of votes given for each candidate at the election was as follows. Crompton Ian Edward, UK Independence Party, 617, 617.
Certain to go here, certain to go.
Curry Edwina, Conservative Party candidate, 18,742, 18742. North Richard Anthony Edward, the Referendum Party candidate, 2,491, 2491. Reynolds Robert Charles, Liberal Democrat, 5,408, 5408. Todd Mark Wainwright, the Labour Party candidate, 32,709.
That is a massive swing to Labour. Edwina Curry held on. It only needed a 1.5% swing. You'll see what it is. Majority of nearly 14,000 ousting Edwina Curry as she knew she would go. Look at the swing. Conservative to Labour, 13.2% in that marginal seat. And here you can see Neil Kinnock there in the festival hall, the Deputy Leader John Prescott, his wife Mrs. Prescott, Peter Mandelson there waiting now for their leader to come in. This is going to be triumph and not triumphalism. What a scene of celebration. You have to remember this is 1974 was the last time they won an election, and that was only just, they were the largest party. This is the first time since 1966 that the Labour Party has a clear overall majority. 31 years where they have not enjoyed an overall majority, and this is it, and it is a vast majority.
You saw the bottom of the poster there. Everywhere they've gone has had New Labour, and they've got the red banners up there, new just at the bottom of it, sideways. But as you say, what a moment this must be for Neil Kinnock. Do you remember what it was like last time when we saw him on the steps of what became known as John Smith House, barely able to control his emotion? He felt so devastated personally that he felt he'd let the party down. Rather in a way, I suspect that John Major may be letting have that same feeling. But look at that, Wise. Everybody enjoying themselves. Where's Tony Blair? Round the back room.
Let's have a listen to that. Pause. I suspect that he must be just about to come in. That's why there's the pause. They want to roar for him when he arrives. We'll be hearing incidentally later on this morning from Neil Kinnock exactly about his feelings at this victory of his party that he led into the last election when he thought they were going to make it. This is the face of New Labour. All ages, different nationalities, races, sexes, a mixture of people you would not know whether they were what party they came from or if they came from no party. It's a complete cross-section.
I think they'll sing this song over and over and over, won't they?
They'll go to bed singing it, they'll get up singing it. It'll be one of those terrible songs that whirs around in their heads and never be able to get it out for the next 5 years.
Neil Kinnock joining in there.
Yeah. John Prescott in a rather more dignified way. John Prescott not singing. Perhaps John Prescott's not entirely sure of the words.
No, I think John Prescott knows he's going to be Deputy Prime Minister. It's a great party.
There is Trevor Nunn there. Alice has just pointed out it's Trevor Nunn smiling there. Rather unfairly, a lot of these people in the arts, individuals in the arts and in other forms of public life are called lovies for Labour. In fact, they just happen to be public people who are also voting for Labour, and it's somehow thought to be odd. I've never quite understood why that is. any more than it is odd they should support the Conservative Party. It just happens to be their views.
Of course, one of the things that Tony Blair has always emphasised is that he genuinely wants a classless party. He's drawn his support from business and from young people.
Tony Blair's keeping them waiting at the moment, probably being perfectly meticulously timed. All of this has been prepared. None of this is haphazard. That's one thing you can be certain of. The Labour Party does not do these things nowadays in a haphazard fashion. We're told that he went back to change his shirt. We're learning a lot of things. Sue earlier said that people weren't interested in whether or not he took sugar in his tea, but I tell you, it's these kind of details that nonetheless get marked down and written about in magazines for ages and ages. He went back at this point, we are told, and changed his shirt. You can't blame him. He'd been wearing the same shirt probably a lot of the day, and certainly not the evening. It was very, very hot. Some of us already quite like to change a shirt, but we'll get our chance later. The referendum party, incidentally, just to go back to that, cost the Conservatives Lewis. This is where the Liberal Democrats won by 1,300 votes. And the referendum, what did it? Labour gained Wirral South. This was the seat which, when they gained it in the by-election a couple of months ago, on a 17% swing, was thought to be quite extraordinary. Labour have gained it, so they've done a tremendous 17% swing. They must have done something like that the whole time. There's Peter Mandelson looking happy, John Prescott there. And outside, the police, of course, waiting. That looks like the serried ranks of the international media, with some people very happy behind them.
It's strange, actually, that John Prescott was looking quite so serious. I remember at one party conference, he grabbed hold of Pauline and said, "Come on, girl," and they did a great turn on the stage. So I suspect that the task ahead is rather weighing on John Prescott's mind.
He's reflecting on it. It may just not be his favourite tune, you never know.
Partying outside as well. There's obviously an overflow party going on.
Another Conservative back in, incidentally. Stephen Dorrell, we said he would get back in Charnwood. He is safely back in. He is still Health Secretary until tomorrow. Stephen Dorrell is back in. Of course, will be someone who might be one of the characters facing on the front bench. Will be Tony Blair and Tony Blair's colleagues. Peter Mandelson. You don't often see Peter Mandelson smiling quite so freely in public. He likes rather the saturnine image that he's given by the media and the rest of the world. He rather fancies himself as a saturnine character, but he ain't being saturnine now.
Peter Mandelson.
The person who moves best, look, is Neil Kinnock. It's the Welsh blood, it's the singer in Neil Kinnock, the man who was a chorus. Look, he actually moves to the music.
Oh yes, he's got a good voice as well.
Exactly.
Very musical. But seriously, going through his mind will be absolute elation.
The one thing about Neil Kinnock, he will not say, he won't brood over the past at all. It's not his character. He knows that from Labour's point of view, he played a major role in breaking some of the old traditions of Labour. Remember those great battles he had against militants and others, and prepared the ground for what Tony Blair was subsequently able to do.
I'm sure that Tony Blair will refer to that in his speech as well. If he sees Neil there, even if he doesn't see Neil there, he will refer to that.
There's Mr. Branson there, still not telling us how he voted.
Enjoying the party.
But one should never dare look into the soul of someone's vote, but my guess is that he might conceivably have voted Labour, only a guess, given the friendship that he appears to have struck up with the Labour hierarchy. Most of these people, in fact, all the party workers from, I imagine, there's Trevor Nunn, one of Britain's greatest living theatre directors. I think they can keep on doing this probably until tomorrow evening, if he had a chance. But he must be coming soon to greet them.
Well, I think he'll want to get the words right, above all. That's Rebel Jana in there, the outgoing member in Leicester, I saw in the crowd. I think he'll just probably want to fine-tune the words a bit, just to make certain he gets the tone right.
Well, presumably, when he was talking to Alistair Campbell on the plane, where are my notes? He was thinking.
Well, he was actually writing at some stage.
Here we are outside the Festival Hall now.
Yeah.
A goods train in the background there. Most other trains are not running. They'll soon. Actually, they are all running. The early trains are running again. That looks like literally
bringing people in for a day's work.
One forgets how late, or rather early, it is. I may be wrong, but I think that's looking back in the distance there, over Waterloo, towards the House of Commons. Isn't that the House of Commons we see on the top right there?
The Victoria Tower there.
There's the Victoria Tower.
The Victoria Tower just peeking over the top there.
Across the river to where he will next week
partying out
arrive
the
in
street as
triumph.
well. They're happy. That's the rostrum that went around with them around the country. They took that rather futuristic rostrum around.
Meanwhile, they're celebrating the departure of lots of Tories. Just let's remind ourselves of some of the big Tories that have gone down. Either senior backbenchers or famous figures or former ministers. Philip Oppenheim, John Boas, Tony Newton, we saw, Rhodes Boyson, former minister, William Waldegrave in Bristol West, Sir Ivor Lawrence, Alistair Burt, the Social Security Minister, Giles Brandreth, the man with the sweaters, Michael Brown, who got into trouble, a little bit into trouble, but should have stayed in Cleethorpes and went out, Rod Richards in Wales, Edwina Curry, Malcolm Rifkin, the Foreign Secretary, Michael Portillo. The list goes on. Angela Knight, the minister who said she was against a single currency, Ian Lang, Michael Curtis, Matthew Carrington, Jerry Hayes, Ian Sproat, Sir John Gorse, Robin Squire, the minister, Dame Peggy Finnegan. It is an extraordinary list. It's a sort of almost like a memorial service for the Tories while this great party is going on. But of course, everyone here, they may individually care for or not dislike the Tories opposed them, but they are delighted that all these people have gone. Angela Rumbo, Roger Evans, Tony Marlowe, Sir John Cope, David Mellor, Marcus Fox, Michael Forsyth, Neil Hamilton, Jonathan Aitken, Nicholas Bonser, David Hunt, Nicholas Budgeon. You can hardly, Alistair, come to the end of that list. That what we're looking at here is a celebration of that.
It is a staggering roll call, and the other thing I was just jotting down a moment ago is, as a symbol of just how staggering it is, the seats that Labour have won tonight that they've never, ever held before. Brentford and Isleworth, Crawley, Chester, Brighton Pavilion, Worcester, Birmingham Hall Green, Leeds North East, Stockton South, Dumfries. These are seats that Labour have never, ever held before. And seats like Burton and Tynemouth that I mentioned earlier on, not since 1945. It's when you have that kind of sea change that even the most famous face in the House of Commons is not safe. In previous elections, when it's been a closer call, we've said, oh, someone like Malcolm Rifkin, as he himself said to you, he hoped he would hang on because of that personal following. Not good enough even for somebody with the profile of the Foreign Secretary.
One of the extraordinary things about this is even when the polls were telling us that there was going to be a swing of this kind, none of us, none of the observers, the journalists, the politicians actually totted up the kinds of people that would be disappearing from the scene. We named one or two in Scotland and the rest. Colin Rowling's there. Why didn't we all realise that on that kind of swing, these huge numbers of people were going to go?
Well, I think the funny thing was, Jonathan, that people didn't quite believe the swing would ever happen like this, despite the fact that all through the campaign we were seeing opinion polls that predicting precisely this kind of swing. Everyone, the pollsters themselves, the parties, individuals were saying, no, it won't happen, it will be much less than that. We think Labour's going to win, but the majority will be in double figures, not triple. And therefore the consequences for cabinet ministers, 6 or 7 we've seen fall tonight, just didn't really cross people's thoughts.
Just to remind us, Colin, this is unprecedented. We have to go back into the history books a long way, and we haven't seen the like of this before and probably shan't again.
Never before. I mean, we won't be certain as to how far the Conservative voters fall until later tomorrow, but this could be the lowest share of the vote that they've got in any election since the first democratic elections in this country in 1832. I mean, that's a staggering thought. And as for Labour, well, it's simply their best ever victory.
There is a pause there. I have a feeling that Tony Blair must be about to come. Alistair, you've got a thought.
The betting shops are going to have an intriguing day tomorrow because they shut the book down on Labour winning several days ago when it was 6-1 on. You had to bet £6 to get £1 back. But I'd be very, very surprised if anyone put a lot of money on a Labour majority of 179. If they did, They're rather rich this morning.
They're going to be very rich this morning. It has quietened down there, and I have a feeling, my guess is that they want it to be a bit quieter, so that although there'll be a great warm welcome, it will also be dignified. They've got the sort of excitement out of the system with the dancing.
I think the cheer will be even bigger by contrast, won't it?
It will be bigger by contrast, but it'll be the cheer of a political party rather than the dancing to a pop group, or a band, I should say.
It's reminiscent of 92 when Clinton won. The same kind of stage management in Arkansas. I was covering that election, and the way everybody queued up and waited and were corralled there, and the moment he burst onto the stage with Hillary was, I suspect, precisely what we're going to see in a few moments. They've learned a few lessons from the Americans, and to no bad effect.
Meanwhile, say that again. It's very, very influenced. A lot of the techniques during the campaign, of course, were straight out of the Clinton campaign.
And meanwhile, Edwina Currie has said it's a cataclysmic night for the Conservatives, and goes on, until they stop being Eurosceptic, they will never win again, which is actually throwing a live bomb into an explosive situation, because that's precisely the row that's going to take place elsewhere. He is now clearly, I think, arriving. Yes. There is the flag of St. George. He must be down there. There's some officials there running across, clearing, making sure, I suspect, that security is perfectly organised and intact for his arrival. He must be just coming round the corner in a moment. But of course, when you say that, they never arrive.
They never arrive. One thing that does strike me, Jonathan, is the way that normally during the course of the evening you get some bumps, you get some oddities.
Here he is, though. Here he is.
But not this time.
No.
But Labour's gone on tramlines.
Completely smooth, completely efficient, as you were saying, the American system in that sense brought to Britain.
And it's a green flag.
Peering for... There is Cherie Blair. A great big hug for one of the...
That's Tom Sawyer, who's the General Secretary of the Party.
General Secretary of the Labour Party. And being one of the key modernisers, was one of the original ideas men behind Labour modernisation.
Had served with John Smith, but went right behind.
Very important figure.
There he is.
There's Tony Blair smiling, again greeting, shaking hands with party workers. They all want to shake his hand. He'll take one or two of them on his way in, everyone getting the camera shot that they can get. This is what he's been doing, of course, in the campaign when he wanted to win. This is the victory.
Oh,
he's going to be eaten up if he's not careful. This is Tony Blair's hour, and everyone knows it. He meets Neil Kinnock, an embrace for Neil Kinnock. And Mrs. Prescott, and then John Prescott, quick word with John Prescott. And I suspect he's now about to address his adoring crowd. It's just coming up to 5:15. Light outside and a lot of light inside.
And the new slogan above him. New government.
Now that was quick.
And that was planned.
Nothing left to chance except the emotions. They'll let him start in a moment, I expect. Tony, the cry goes up.
Thank you. Thanks, that's wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. Well,
these are extraordinary scenes in British political life.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Every time he says thank you, they want more.
Thank you. Well, a new dawn has broken, has it not? And it is wonderful. We always said that if we had the courage to change, then we could do it, and we did it. And let me say this to you. The British people have put their trust in us. It is a moving and it is a humbling experience. And the size of our likely majority now imposes a special sort of responsibility upon us. We have been elected as New Labour and we will govern as New Labour. We were elected because as a party today, we represent the whole of this nation. And we will govern for the whole of this nation, every single part of it. We will speak up for that decent, hard-working majority of the British people whose voice has been silent for all too long in our political life. And we'll set about doing the good, practical things that need to be done in this country. Extending educational opportunity, not to an elite, but to all our children. Modernising our welfare state, rebuilding our National Health Service as a proper National Health Service to serve the needs of Britain. We will work with business to create that dynamic and enterprising economy we need, and we will work with all our people for that just and decent society that the British people have wanted for so long. This vote tonight has been a vote for the future, for a new era of politics in Britain, so that we can put behind us the battles of this past century and address the challenges of the new century. It will be a Britain renewed, where through education and technology and enterprise, we equip our country for the future in a different and new economic world, and where we build a nation united, with common purpose, shared values, with no one shut out, no one excluded, no one told that they do not matter. In that society, tolerance and respect will be the order of the day, as we watch our children grow in strength and our elderly rest easy and secure in old age. That is the country we have wanted for so long. A Britain whose politics starts once again to live up to the finest ideals of public service. And a Britain that stands tall in the world, whose sense of its future is as certain and confident as its sense of its own history. Today, on the eve of this new millennium, the British people have ushered in this new era of politics. And the great thing about it is that we have won support in this election from all walks of life, from all classes of people, from every single corner of our country. We are now today the People's Party. the party of all the people, the many, not the few, the party that belongs to every part of Britain, no matter what people's background or their creed or their colour, the party that can stand up for what is a great country. And I want everyone to feel proud in their country tonight because they all have a stake in its success. I believe in Britain, and tonight the people of Britain are uniting behind New Labour. They are uniting around basic British values, uniting to put the divisions of the past behind us, uniting to face the challenges of the future, uniting at long last as one nation. 3 days ago, I quoted one of my predecessors, John Smith. He said, all we ask is the chance to serve. Tonight, the British people have given us the chance to serve, and serve we will, with all our heart and all our mind. And to you, all of you that have come here this evening, I say thank you for all your work and for all your help. It's been a long journey for this party, has it not? It's been a long journey. I'm delighted that Neil Kinnock is here tonight as well. Neil took us back from the brink of extinction and helped make this party what it is today. And it is with real pride that we, all the people here, young and old from every part of the country, from every background, we say tonight, you, the British people, have given us the chance to serve you. You have put your trust in us, and we say to you, we shall repay that trust for you. We govern for you. Finally, all these years, we have been people saying but never given the chance to do. And yet the only purpose in being in politics is to do, to get things done, to make things happen. Now we have the chance to make things happen. And we take that responsibility upon us, and we say we shall discharge it, and we shall make this country as proud of us as tonight we are proud of them. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
So, Tony Blair with a revivalist, visionary speech. A speech with passion directed not only at his audience there, but to the wider audience. A new dawn has broken, he said. We are the People's Party. We are the One Nation Party, echoing Disraeli. We shall repay the trust that the people have put in us. We will speak up for the ordinary, decent, hard-working people. It was a speech designed to say, I hope that you will embrace New Labour, new government, as we seek to embrace you. It is the start of a new era, a powerful speech of the kind that we've heard before, but not under those remarkable circumstances. Being pulled along, genuine warmth here. Neil Kinnock clearly very moved when the tribute was paid to him by Tony Blair. You saw his lip quiver as he was welcomed by the crowd. Every Labour Party activist knows what Neil Kinnock has done for the Labour Party. Cherie looking really affected there by happiness. Arm in arm with John Prescott, his deputy leader, who travelled the country 10,000 miles on the stomp, had a hugely successful campaign. They come from different traditions in the party, but you could not put a bus ticket at the moment between either of them when it comes to New Labour, New Britain, or New Labour, New Government. If they didn't have those barricades there, I think that both of them, all four of them, would be swamped, but the crowd is behind a safe barricade.
We're talking about the dawn there, and there it is.
Yeah, there is.
The dawn sky breaking over all this. Tony Blair specifically referring to the new dawn in his speech.
In 7 hours, from 10 o'clock until now, roughly 7 hours, the landscape has been transformed. From now on, of course, as has been during the campaign, but with greater intensity now, Tony Blair will never be free of security. Here is John Major in a different mood, being welcomed at Conservative Central Office in Smith Square. He walks in, hasn't said a word as we thought he might not. Security men on the edge looking around. He disappears in there, being embraced, and here we are. He will be given a warm welcome. Norma's smiling. Maybe she'll be relieved that number 10 Downing Street is no longer to be her home, that she no longer has to be the first wife.
And this, of course, will lift them just a little. These are the people who worked so hard in their campaign. Kiss to one of the workers there, one of the party activists. And the theme of the night, of course, of all those we've spoken to is "We'll be back."
He's talking to Michael Portillo there. I imagine giving Michael Portillo a moment's comfort.
Alan Duncan too there.
There's so many of his colleagues who will not be in Parliament, as he referred to in his speech in Huntingdon. He's going to be giving a lot of commiserations over the next few days to them. So unlike last year. Here last year, you remember, last time round, 1992, the elation at the unexpected victory. He is going to speak, I think. You're a star, I think someone said. John Major, you're a star, just as he was about to speak.
Thank you very much for being here. Thank you, above all, for all you've done in the last few weeks and the last few months. I know how hard so many of you have worked. I know how much you have sacrificed, given up, hoped, dreamed for a different result and a different outcome tonight. It hasn't proved that way. I don't think there was much that we left undone that we could have done. There are some times in politics when the ball just rolls in the opposite direction and there isn't a great deal that you can do about it. I don't think it is in our best interests to spend our time in the immediate future doing anything other than preparing for what lies ahead, not just in the short term, but in the medium term. Politics is a rough old trade. Sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. But when you don't, you just step back, ask yourself why you didn't, and put yourself in a position to make sure that next time...
Yes.
Next time.
Tory telecom reforms.
That next time you get it right, and you do win. I've been in the Conservative Party for as long as I can remember. I guess many of the people in this room joined the Conservative Party as soon as they could as well. And we joined it for the same reasons. We didn't join it just for the nights when you win, just for the easy victories from time to time. We didn't join it for the office. We didn't join it for the spoils. We joined it because we care about what it stands for, and we care about what it can do for this country. Now, we have been in being as a party for longer than any other democratic party in Western Europe. We've won more elections. We've lost a few on the route. But we've won more elections, and we have perhaps served in government longer, more often, and better in the interests of our country than any other democratic. And we will do so again. Tonight we have suffered a very bad defeat. Let us not pretend to ourselves it was anything other than what it was. Unless we accept it for what it was and look at it, we will be less able to put it right. We've lost some very good servants of the party, people who've devoted a huge amount of their life to the service of this country and the service of this party. We've lost, temporarily I hope, some colleagues, both senior and not so senior, who still have a lot of service to give this country and this party, and who will, I hope, be back where they should be, in the House of Commons, serving us all. And they lost, from what I saw of it, with a dignity that made me as proud of this party as I have been aware. We now have a job to do, all of us.
It's those reforms again, John, it's those reforms again.
They tell me the technological age is a good thing. Forgive me if from time to time I just have a small leave to doubt whether that is absolutely entirely true. We'll have to regroup. We'll have to sit back. I hope everybody will go away, have a rest. You've earned it. Not for too long. And then we'll begin to work again. There's a job to do in opposition. To be in opposition in Parliament is a pretty honourable way of life. To make sure that the government of the day is kept under close scrutiny. We'll deal fairly. If they do what we think is right for our country, we'll support them. If they do what we think is wrong for our country, then we'll oppose them as vigorously as we can with every member we have and every party worker we have up and down the country. So I know tonight is not a light night for cheers and champagne for us. It's a night perhaps to look back, I hope with some pride, at the changes that we have made to our country in the last 18 years. I first entered Parliament 18 years ago, tomorrow, I think. And the difference in our country is a difference you could not express unless you remembered what it was like in May of 1979 when the Conservatives first came to government. Many people who voted in this general election perhaps never knew that, for they have never known anything in their adult lives but Conservative government. And others perhaps have not remembered precisely what it was like. Well, I said a moment ago that this party had served longer in government than any other. We've suffered great defeats before. We have always come back. We have always come back. And we have always come back because there is something in the Conservative philosophy and the Conservative instinct that runs absolutely with the grain of the British instinct. We must make sure we rediscover that. not just in the interests of our party, but in the interests of our country. So there is a great deal of work to do. I would just say three final things. Firstly, perhaps I can reiterate to this group here all these faces I've come to know so well, in some cases over many years, in some cases more recently. If you will forgive me repeating something I said a little earlier, and you may possibly have seen, I think perhaps here of all places is a good place to pay tribute to some of the people who have done so much to help over recent years. The party chairman, not here now, but on his way here, and I hope shortly here. Those of our colleagues whom we have lost, and on a more personal basis, though I have temporarily mislaid her, Norma. So, right, okay, we lost. So we... Go
on, John.
So go away for the weekend, relax, fire yourself up again, and then come back. Because when you come back, at the beginning of next week, we've got a job, and we better start doing it then. Thank you very much.
So, John Major talking there almost as if to his family in Baldwin-esque mood, talking intimately, sadly about what happened. Worth remembering that this Prime Minister now only for a few more hours, has served as Prime Minister longer than Lloyd George, longer than Attlee, almost as long as Baldwin, almost as long as Macmillan. Characteristically, he said, sometimes the ball just rolls in the opposite direction. Politics, he told all these workers here, is a rough old trade, and they know it. You have to ask why we lost. There's Michael Portillo, who will definitely be asking that question assiduously. And next time, he says, we've got to get it right. It was a very bad defeat. So there we are. We've had the joy of the Labour Party and the sorrow of the Tory Party, those twin stories of the night. And now Alistair can give us a final version before we come to a pause this part of the morning of his battleground. Alistair.
Thanks, Jonathan. Well, that's the first part of it. Cast your mind back all those hours, and we started off with the easiest seats to win up here. I just feel particularly sorry at this very moment in time for Sebastian Coe down in Falmouth and Camborne, the only one on that full page there that's yet to declare, but otherwise it's all Labour. Let's shunt it through now, losing these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5s, and come into the more difficult territory. Well, Colne Valley, Graham Riddick held on there in the 6% swing, but 7 was a clean sweep. 8% was nearly a clean sweep, but Stephen Shakespeare didn't quite win it for the Tories. The Liberal Democrat won in Colchester. 9%, not quite a clean sweep. Bury St Edmunds down there at the bottom remains in Tory hands. Brecon and Radnor we shall hear about tomorrow. Our suspicion is that'll probably go to the Liberal Democrats, but who knows. Then over here we've got a couple more waiting, but we've got Aldridge and Eddisbury. They remained in Tory hands. And then finally over here 11%, 2 Tory seats in that. And just to the final 2 columns to show you the final picture. There are those 2 I was talking about. It's only here that really you start to build up. But look, even here, Edinburgh West, Lord James Douglas Hamilton, he loses his Tory seat in Edinburgh to the Liberal Democrats. Plaid Cymru held on there in Ynys Môn, and slowly but surely, only at the 14% swing mark do we start to see a majority of Conservative seats in that territory. So we also began the evening by showing you what the House of Commons would look like. We recreated it for you at the beginning of the evening, reminding you these were the government benches, these the opposition benches, and we brought in the MPs and we coloured them by their party persuasions. And really, that figure is the story of the night. 418 Labour members of Parliament now on the government benches. That's the projection when all of the counting is finished by tomorrow. Over here, we're projecting just 166 Tory seats. Over here, the Liberal Democrats, the second big story of the evening, 46 seats, up from 18 in the last Parliament. Down here, the others, including Plaid Cymru, pretty static night for them, but also the Scottish nationalists who've done well and made 4 gains. And don't forget Martin Bell sitting there with the others. Crunch it all together for the final time, and just to remind you, a Labour majority of 177. Jonathan.
And Tony Blair, who's made 3 speeches already, I think is about to give us another one. Let's have a look. Yes, he is.
Well, it's been quite a night.
Terrible sound at the moment.
It's been quite a night.
3 glowing kisses.
I'd just like
to
to
the
say one or
supporters.
two words to you people, because you're the people that have made this election possible with all the work that you've done. You've been absolutely wonderful all the way through. We've got the most magnificent, professional, disciplined force in British politics today in today's Labour Party. Well done, all of you. You know, we had the right ideas, we had the right policies, but it couldn't have been done unless we also had the right organisation. And day in, day out, I watched a Labour Party that was an absolute pride and joy to watch. A party that the whole time was focused on getting across Labour's message, winning support in every single part of the country, and did just a wonderful, wonderful job. So I cannot tell you how deeply grateful I am. You deserve a party tonight, you really do. And it would be invidious to thank or start to going through all the various people that contributed to this. But I tell you what I noticed, and what gave me most pride of all. Not just those big figures in the Labour Party that did their work and did it magnificently all throughout the country, but the large numbers of young people, you know, the new generation in British politics today, who came in, supported the Labour Party, did a wonderful job for us, and it's a great thing that today's young people are back supporting the Labour Party as a party of government. And I know a lot of you gave up a lot of time, a lot of effort, in some cases a lot of money, for which we're also very grateful. And what you did simply could never have been contemplated 10, 15, 20 years ago for our party. We put that organisation together, and we did it, in the end, because of a basic belief and commitment. And that basic commitment is that this country deserves better than another 5 years of Conservative government. We did it because we believe that the values of a decent society, the interests of a country run for all its people, not just a privileged few, the basic belief in justice and progress and a sense of community and a fair deal for ordinary people. We did it because we believe these are the values not just of the Labour Party but of Britain, and those are the values that should be governing Britain. So tonight, as we contemplate this great victory, we do so, as I said outside, with a sense of responsibility and a sense of humility, but also with some excitement and hope at what change can bring. And even though it has required this magnificent task of work and commitment and dedication to bring about this victory, you know as much as me, the real work now begins. The real work of making sure our country is great again now begins. So enjoy today. Rejoice at a victory well won. And remember, we didn't win it for ourselves, We won it for the British people, and we want to make them grateful for what they've done. Thank you very much.
So there, Tony Blair talking to his party workers, the people who had made the machine that helped bring Labour to power. Earlier on, he was talking to the nation about his ideas. That was much more saying, thank you, we had a terrific machine that did it, a disciplined force. A force of people who could do, he was seeming to say, almost anything once it had put its mind to it. So they've had their money's worth from him this evening. He's made 4 speeches at his count, in the club down the road, then before the great audience in the festival hall, and now to his party workers. And I think that for him will be that, because in a few hours' time, it's now, what, 5:45, in about 4 hours' time, he will be going from his home in Islington to Buckingham Palace, where the Queen will ask him to form the new government, and he will, of course, accept. And at that moment, later this morning, he will become Prime Minister, and he will move into Downing Street, the Majors having moved out. While we've been watching this, Labour have gained another seat, Falmouth and Camborne. Sebastian Coe is out in Falmouth and Camborne. He was under tremendous threat. Peter de Savary there for the referendum party did very well, winning 6.6% of the vote, more than Labour's majority. So the referendum party played a part in the removal of Sebastian Coe in Falmouth and Camborne. So there we leave the celebrations at the festival hall. They will go on for a little bit longer. You deserve your party, he said. But with 626 of the 659 votes in, let's now have a look at a summary. So we are predicting now a majority for Labour of 177. 626 seats in, 330, that winning post. Labour's well passed on 415 seats already. The Conservatives on 116, they're not going to get many more. Liberal Democrats on 40, that extraordinary record, and the rest, including Martin Bell, on 11. And here are some results. Labour have gained Wirral South. They gained Falmouth and Camborne, as we've just seen. They gained Harrow East. They gained Wimbledon. The list could be far, far longer, but here are some key Conservative results. They've held on to Cambridge North West, that's Brown Mulwiney's seat. They held on, that's the Home Secretary as was in Folkestone and Hythe. They've held on to Suffolk Coastal, that's John Gummer, and they lost Tatton to Martin Bell. And here is the Lib Dem results. They're tremendous gains in Kingston, Surbiton, Richmond Park, Lewes, Oxford West and Abingdon. And Michael Portillo, who we saw at Conservative Party headquarters, is out. Malcolm Rifkind is out. Michael Forsyth is out for the Tories. And that is not the half of it. Neil Hamilton is also out. William Walgrave in Bristol West is out. And Ian Lang from Galloway and Upper Nisdale is out. Paddy Ashdown has talked about our greatest achievement for 60 years. And given the results so far, so well he might. Prime Minister John Major has said we have been comprehensively defeated. He said much more than that, as we've been hearing as well. And Tony Blair, we've done it. The British people have put their trust in us. And he also said much more, as we've been hearing. A quick wrap round now from everyone. Mike Brunson.
We've been used, haven't we, over the years to seeing the British people speaking its mind, but have they ever spoken with such clarity and with such a huge impact as this? The decision that they wanted nothing more to do with the Conservatives was quite clear. So then you have the dynamic of the evening. You have John Major talking in Conservative headquarters about looking back with pride over the changes of the last 18 years. But what was Tony Blair talking about? He was talking about the 4 pledges that he's now going to operate. The health service waiting list to be cut, school class sizes down, 200,000 young people back to work, Parliament for Scotland and Wales. Life moves immediately on to the new Labour agenda.
And your thought, Alistair Stewart?
In my department, Labour have torn up all the reference books. 89 out of 90 of their target seats they've taken, 144 net gains, even leaping from 3rd place to winning post. They have rewritten the rules of my game.
It was a good job that your battleground could go on and on as far as it did, and the swingometer didn't just go off the top as it would have done in the old days.
Did a good job.
Colin Rowlings, your final thought.
The most dramatic election since 1945. Labour has swept across the entire country. There are no Conservatives in Scotland. There will probably be none in Wales tomorrow once we've heard from Brecon. Labour in particular has done well in London and the South East. Places where almost were no-go areas in the 1980s, Labour has bounced back and bounced back with a vengeance.
Thanks, Colin. Stephen Dorrell, who is one of the cabinet ministers who is back in and could well be a potential leader, particularly as the part of the field has fallen by the wayside, said now is not the time to draw firm conclusions about the leadership, but as long as John Major remains leader, he has my support. So it has been an extraordinary night. We started at the beginning of the night talking about a seismic shift. Well, that seismic shift has happened in a way that no one had imagined, on a scale that no one could have believed. Three incredible things have happened. A massive victory for the Labour Party, a massive defeat for the Tory Party, and for the Liberal Democrats, an achievement that they have not had for 60 years, probably 45 seats in the next Parliament. GMTV will be back on air at 6 o'clock. We will be back to continue what is going to be a dramatic story tomorrow too, a major constitutional story, finding out what everyone is saying about the implications of this result. We'll be back at 9:25 tomorrow morning. We're going to take a little bit of kip now at 10 to 6 with this thought that we have all witnessed tonight, a major event in the history of the second half of the 20th century in Britain. For the moment, good morning.
From the studios of ITN, The News with Dennis Toohey.
Good morning. Landslide seems an inadequate word to describe the scale of Tony Blair's election victory. It's been nothing short of a political earthquake. With 606 results in so far, the state of the parties is as follows. Labour has 412 seats, the Conservatives 145, the Liberal Democrats 39, the Scottish Nationalists 6, the Welsh Nationalists 4, and there's one independent, Martin Bell, who unseated Neil Hamilton in Tatton. The votes in Northern Ireland are counted today. This gives Labour a projected majority of 181 seats, dwarfing Mrs Thatcher's victory in 1983 and even Labour's famous victory in 1945. This report from Kevin Dunn.
By the time Tony Blair arrived for his count at Sedgefield, it was already clear that he was Prime Minister-elect, having led Labour to a landslide the like of which the party has not seen this century. He thanked supporters and officials and had emotional words of thanks for his wife Cherie and his father Leo.
I know that for him, like me, all that could have made this moment complete was that my mother was here as well.
Mr Blair then addressed the wider constituency.
We are a great country. The British people are a great people. There is no greater honour than to serve them, and serve them we will. Thank you.
It was a moment for Mr Blair's children, rarely seen in public, to enjoy too.
Angela Evans-Smith, Labour, 29,600.
The scale of Labour's triumph was apparent early on. Here, Basildon, the symbol of Conservative victory 5 years ago, was a vital gain. In scenes repeated across the country, prominent Tories were tumbled out of Parliament and out of office. The biggest casualty of all, Michael Portillo, Defence Secretary, until today probable contender for the Conservative leadership.
A truly terrible night for the Conservatives. I would have wished to have been part of rebuilding it inside the House of Commons. I can't now do that, but I would like to do whatever I can from the wings to help rebuild a great party which has a great future.
John Major arrived for the count at his safe Huntingdon seat, knowing he had presided over an electoral disaster and ready to concede defeat publicly and quickly.
Tonight, we had been comprehensively defeated. We will listen to the voice of the electorate. We will consider what has been said to us. I think we must reflect upon it. I know that we will.
As he left for London and an audience with the Queen later this morning to tender his resignation, Tony and Cherie Blair were sharing a quiet moment on the plane down from Teesside. But Labour are not the only party celebrating. Paddy Ashdown got a hero's welcome in London, having spearheaded a campaign which catapulted the Liberal Democrats to their best result for more than half a century. Mr. Ashdown said it was an historic night.
Now to be the cornerstone, the rock upon which we can build a new and modern constitution for our country that will begin to rebuild the bridge between the government and the governed, and bring about, ladies and gentlemen, bring about, colleagues, what I believe will be a parliament of historic reform in this country in the years ahead.
Labour's celebration party began early and continued through the night. A few minutes ago, in the pale light of dawn, Tony Blair arrived to join the victory party. In a few hours' time, he will enter 10 Downing Street, the youngest Prime Minister this century. Kevin Dunn, ITN.
And that's it. Next on ITV is GMTV. Election 97 will be back on the air live at 9:25. Meanwhile, from us, goodbye.
Well, we apologise that we've momentarily lost transmission. Very shortly, though, we will be joining GMTV to start the new day. we do apologise for the break in transmission. We can now join the team at GMTV.
You're watching GMTV's Election Special with Eamon Holmes, Fiona Phillips and Penny Smith.
Tonight, we have been comprehensively defeated. We will listen to the voice of the electorate. We will consider what has been said to us. I think we must reflect upon it. I know that we will. And I know when we have reflected, we will begin to prepare once again for that day in the future, I hope not too far distant, when my party may once again return to government in the service of this country. Thank you.
A new dawn has broken, has it not? And it is wonderful. We always said that if we had the courage to change, then we could do it, and we did it.
Hello there, good morning to you. It's just gone past 6 o'clock on Friday, May 2nd, 1997, and you're waking up to a new Britain under New Labour.
Yes, because while you've been asleep, the political map of the country, well, it's really been redrawn. We have a new Prime Minister. His name is Anthony Charles Linton Blair.
Yes, John Major phoned him to concede defeat at 2:30 this morning, and by midday, Tony Blair and his new Labour Party will formally take over the reins of government.
Now, it was a night of incredible drama, a result beyond Labour's wildest dreams and, of course, a Tory disaster beyond their worst nightmares. Cabinet ministers, they went down like 9 pins. Michael Portillo, Malcolm Rifkind, Michael Forsyth, and that's just to name but a few. It was the biggest biggest rout of the Tory party for 150 years.
Now, obviously, for Labour, it was a night of jubilation as they stormed to their best election result ever, giving them a projected majority at the time of speaking of 181 seats. That's the way it stands at the minute, a projected majority of 181 seats for Labour. The Conservatives were wiped out in Scotland, and with 1 seat to declare, they may be pushed out of Wales totally as well. The Liberal Democrats, well, good night for them. They more than doubled their seats.
And in the next 3.5 hours, we'll be bringing you the drama, the tears, and yes, the laughter of one of the most astonishing nights in British political history. We can go now live to Martin Frizzell, who is outside the new Prime Minister's house at Islington in North London. Martin.
Fiona, good morning. Tony Blair has just arrived here in Islington. He's going over to the crowds who've been standing here for the past hour or so. He's just come straight from the Royal Festival Hall. He and his wife, Cherie, who's just going up to the crowd as well. Not just a crowd, but these are their neighbours, of course, here in Islington, receiving red roses. And what a morning. Daylight is broken, and with it, as you said, a new Prime Minister and a new era in British politics. And let's just stay on Tony Blair and watch what happens now. He's shaking hands. He must be very, very tired. It's a day that, of course, started off several hundred miles from here, up in Sedgefield near Durham. He went to the count just before midnight. It was declared, and of course he gave now 4 speeches in total. And of course there he's wearing the red tie. Throughout the campaign he's been wearing various colours of tie, mainly blue in fact, but now this morning, the most important morning of all, he's got the red tie on. And I'm just looking for any sign of his children, but the children aren't here just now. Nicholas and Catherine and Ewan, not with him at the moment. He's saying hello to the neighbours now, and the interesting thing about the neighbours is that the father of the house next door is actually a Tory supporter. He voted for the local Tory candidate here, but of course Chris Hughes, who's the Labour candidate in Islington, was returned, and they're just saying hello, probably saying sorry about all the inconvenience that we may have caused. And the family next door, the youngsters, they play, of course, with the Blair children, but perhaps not for much longer, because the big question now is, will the Blair family stay here, or will they move into number 10, which is considerably more cramped than the house here in Islington, a big 4-storey house that he's about to go into now. Must be very tired indeed. He's got the suitcase with him, change of clothes, because of course he will need a clean shirt, because in a few hours' time he'll get a few hours sleep. He'll be off to Buckingham Palace to accept from the Queen the greatest office of state. So for the time being, from Islington, the new Prime Minister-elect is going to get a few hours shut-eye.
Martin, thank you very much indeed. We'll be coming back to you, obviously, throughout the programme. So those pictures there live this morning. That's the scene you're waking up to. Those pictures live from Islington in London. That is your new Prime Minister. Not Martin Frizzell, Tony Blair, I should point out there at that stage. Now let's have a look at how the parties shape up. 47 seats still left to declare. This is the situation. Labour, 413 seats. The Conservatives, 147. Liberal Democrats on 40. Just taking a look at the other parties there, so far taking up 11 seats. All of that means it gives Labour a projected majority, I stress that, a projected majority at the moment of a massive 181 seats. Now, Labour's victory means that Scotland will now have a referendum to decide whether it'll have a parliament for the first time in more than 200 years.
Now, in the next 3.5 hours, we will be bringing you all the excitement and drama of the events on this extraordinary election night, which was, of course, last night. And here is what's coming up for you this morning. Now, he's about to become the youngest Prime Minister this century. But who is the man behind the smile? We go in search of the real Tony Blair.
And what now for the Conservative Party after its worst result for 150 years? I'll be asking John Major's close friend, Geoffrey Archer. And, of course, we'll be talking to all the faces, all the people that are coming out of the party next door at the Royal Festival Hall, where it's all happening for Labour, bringing you the atmosphere of the morning as it unfolds, because it is an historic day that you're waking up to.
Yep, and, of course, it was a night of triumph for Tony Blair, but a night of deep despair for John Major and his party, which was all watched by Sue Saville, who is at Conservative Party headquarters in central London. Morning to you, Sue. Any sign of Mr Major yet?
There certainly has been. He came speeding here through the square, Smith Square, just about 40 minutes ago. Not a triumphal speeding through the square at all, of course. He had to pass here. These are Labour supporters opposite. He got a lot of jeering and heckling as he came through. He then came down here, and as we speak, he's still in Tory Central Office. Any moment now, we're expecting to see John Major appear here. Here he is, I think, as we speak, coming out now to depart from Central Office. Let's see if we might catch that and stay with it. He's been inside Central Office here saying his thank yous and really his sad farewells to the party workers who have been labouring so hard, who really had that impossible task of trying to get that great victory that wasn't going to be to turn over the impossibility of the polls. So it looks like some of the party workers are now departing. Labour Party supporters on the other side of the road there are certainly making themselves heard. It may be a couple of minutes yet before we see John Major once again, but he's in there and we're just waiting for that now, Fiona.
Yeah, following what Michael Portillo called a truly terrible night, Sue. Talk us through what happened.
It really was. The signs came very early indeed. It was really after the first half dozen or so results came in that people here at Central Office were recognising that it was going to be a defeat. But what a defeat. It only really became apparent a couple of hours later, the scale of it. People here at Central Office were horrified. You can see up at the windows there have been people at all levels up in the War Room, which is where the hub of the office was run from, the whole operation here. And further down, lower down in this 6-storey building, there is a great big auditorium that's been hugely refurbished at great cost for the press. In there, everybody was just watching and waiting. The tension was amazing, and as those results came in, there were party workers with tears in their eyes, and as they watched John Major give his speech conceding defeat, they said how honourable, how dignified. So the workers here who'd waited so long to see John Major, it turned out to be the last night that he is going to be Prime Minister.
It was an ashen-faced John Major who stepped forward in Huntingdon to accept winning the battle of his own seat and to concede losing the war of the overall election campaign. Party workers were amazed that despite his devastation, John Major managed to pay a heartfelt tribute to his own most loyal supporter.
Most people who have known Norma, most people who have seen her, will realise that not only has she graced this constituency for 18 years, I think she has graced a much larger stage in recent years, and my debt to her.
His son James Major was too upset to speak. Constituency workers overwhelmed at their party's defeat.
I think a big mistake has been made, and I think the true horrors will be revealed over the next 6 months.
Totally gutted. I think it's the biggest political con we've ever seen.
John Major's arrival at Conservative Party headquarters in London was an emotional one. The Tory party now begins its post-mortem, and John Major decides his own political future. So no sign of John Major just yet, but workers here desperately keen to see, they make sure that John Major gets a good sending off. From here he goes on to Downing Street for his last few hours there, packing up at Downing Street, and then later this morning, 11:30, he's due to go to see the Queen at Buckingham Palace, when John Major will tender his resignation as Prime Minister after 6.5 years in office. That's the schedule, and any minute now we hope to see him departing from Central Office for the last time as Prime Minister this morning.
And when he does, we'll be straight back to you. Sue Saville outside Tory Party Central Office. Thanks very much.
OK, that's at Smith Square in London. We now go to Downing Street. Gavin Partington, our chief political correspondent, is outside number 10. Gavin, hello. When does the Prime Minister then actually have to pack up?
Well, the packing up takes place this morning. As you gather, of course, the Prime Minister is probably going to leave Central Office shortly, come to Downing Street. He'll stay inside number 10 just behind me for the first few hours, and then we expect that he will go to the Palace at 11:30 to see the Queen and tender his formal resignation. And from that point, he ceases to be Prime Minister, and he does not return to number 10. The next event here in Downing Street will be when Tony Blair actually enters here around about noon, we expect, having been to the Palace and having been appointed Prime Minister.
Gavin, of course, it's a morning of mixed emotions for the country. There's a lot of jubilation, obviously, for Labour Party supporters and people who wanted to see the Conservative government out. But we heard John Major's acceptance of defeat described as honourable and dignified. You know this man, you've followed him, you've interviewed him on many, many occasions. What next for him?
Well, I think John Major in defeat actually demonstrated the sort of magnanimity, frankly, that he's often demonstrated in office. I remember him telling a close friend a couple of years ago that sooner or later a leader of the Conservative Party, and it might be him, would have to take the Conservatives in opposition, and here you go, you know, he's taken it. And he said, look, sometimes you recognise the ball rolls in the other direction. It's rolled in a very great way last night, and I think that sort of magnanimous approach was fairly evident when he made his acceptance speech in Huntingdon and his speech just outside Conservative Central Office. But I mean, to give you a flavour of the sort of excitement and anticipation on the other side of the fence, as it were, just look at the scenes around here in Downing Street this morning, Eamon. We've got the world's media here. I've covered several events in here before, some big events. I've covered the fall of Thatcher back in 1990, when John Major was elected as Prime Minister in 1992. And I don't think I've ever seen as many of the world's press, photographers, cameramen around this place waiting for Mr. Major to arrive, and of course the handover of power later this morning.
Yeah, well, I suppose it's an end of an era, and of course the next thing everybody's going to talk about is who will actually lead the Conservatives. Will the Prime Minister step down? How long will it take him to step down if that happens, Gavin? But we will keep you there, and as soon as the Prime Minister arrives, we will come back to you. We think he's about to leave Smith Square. We're just going to go back there and see what's happening. Sue Saville's there for us. Sue, what's the situation there? Sue can't hear me there as it stands, but obviously the Prime Minister has been in there. He has been addressing the troops at Conservative Party headquarters there. Of course, the party in general just not used to defeat since...
Obviously he's got a lot of consoling to do, that's why he's been in there.
I'm sure. Right, we're here bringing you the flavour of the morning as you're waking up this morning, and still to come, this is what we've got for you. He will be the youngest Prime Minister this century. He's got the biggest Labour majority ever. But who is the man behind the smile who's going to be your PM? We go in search of the real Tony Blair.
And the man who has spent the last hours with John Major, his close advisor, and his friend Geoffrey Archer. He joins us on the sofa.
But first, let's get more details off the night's events. Here's Penny Smith with those. Good morning, Penny.
Thanks very much. Good morning. In a victory beyond their wildest dreams, Tony Blair and New Labour have changed the face of British politics. The Tories have been routed across the country, disintegrating as a political force. And for the Liberal Democrats, it's been their best result for 70 years. But election 97 will be remembered for the brutal severing of the Conservatives' hold on power, as Sue Jameson reports.
It was the moment Labour knew even the Tory cabinet was in total meltdown. Michael Portillo, the Defence Secretary, bowed out not only as an MP, but as one of the main challengers for the Conservative leadership.
A truly terrible night for the Conservatives. I would have wished to have been part of rebuilding it inside the House of Commons. I can't now do that, but I would like to do whatever I can from the wings to help rebuild a great party which has a great future.
And the cabinet casualty list went on. Malcolm Rifkind, Michael Forsyth, Ian Lang, William Waldegrave, a virtual roll call of the Tory leadership. However, two key cabinet members scraped through, Stephen Dorrell and Julian Shepherd. But even Mrs Thatcher's old seat of Finchley went Labour in this landslide. It was a night when even the most colourful of MPs lost. David Mellor's political career was halted with jeers and boos. And in Tatton, Neil Hamilton always said he was innocent of sleaze charges till proven guilty, but the voters overwhelmingly rejected him in favour of veteran journalist Martin Bell.
All applauding there, Conservative Party headquarters, rather more sombre scenes.